Hello, hello.
Hey, Daniel, how you doing?
Good, you? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, perfect. How's it going?
I am just chilling, my guy.
Yeah, me too.
How have you been? How was your thing that you did?
Yeah, it was good. I'm sorry I'm late. If anyone was wondering about that, yeah, I had a celebration with my family with my brother. I think he turned 31. Actually, it's pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah,
We'll get there eventually.
yeah, just in due time, right?
Yeah, man, we were just chilling. I figured I'm glad I didn't go super hard. I was like, it's all good. I haven't talked to the guy in a week. I'm sure he had something going on. So I'm happy to have you here, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here. Glad to talk. This is what America's all about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So again, my name's Daniel. I'm, I don't know. What's some typical things your audience would be interested in knowing about me? I guess.
Kind of is if you don't have to, but if you want to like let us know where you sit on the American political spectrum, kind of
Sure.
what your most important values are.
All right.
Wes wants to know if you watch JoJo.
Actually, I'm not huge on JoJo, but I have seen it. My buddy, a good buddy of mine in his house, he loves JoJo, and I've watched like one or two seasons with him.
Mm.
I think the one with the world though, or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Stardust
Yeah,
Crusaders
yes,
slaps.
yes, that one's pretty darn good. But politically, actually, it's funny. I asked to give you guys some insight into just how I think. I guess I asked a math teacher back in high school. We asked him in our class, what political party do you uh, identify as, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he said, I hate that question. And obviously we were like, okay, well, why? And he drew a bell curve, and he was like, if you ask any population anything about a particular issue, you almost always get a bell curve in response, whereas 90% of the people are in the middle. And you have the extremes on each end, so political left and right.
Mm-hmm.
So that just stuck into my head, and I was like, well, okay, then that does make mathematically not much sense to be looking for answers on either side, let's say. So I'll tell you that in my personal opinion, the answers I look for, I tend to try to make things work in the middle. Um, I've never chosen a party. I've never done much of anything. I think I'm an independent, if not even just not elected.
Mm.
And I actually haven't voted in a presidential election until this year. So
Okay,
that's kind of where I stand with things.
cool. Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm technically registered Democrat, but that's just because I like voting in primary elections.
Hmm.
I'm for the sake of disclosure, I'm way farther left than any particular candidate that I've seen.
That's fine. I mean, yeah, we're all welcome to our opinions.
Mm-hmm. So I sent you a couple. About a week ago, I sent you a couple topics that I want to run through with you. I think the best place to start might be the election itself, particularly allegations of voter fraud.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, I looked those over. So one of the questions I think it was just to start it off was, was there voter fraud in my
Mm-hmm.
perception of things? And yes is the short answer.
Okay.
And I don't think that what we're going through right now as a country is anything close to typical. I think, really just kind of going big picture here. I feel that we're at the precipice of a big change, not only on a country scale, but pretty much on a world order scale. And so that's why things aren't going in I don't know how to describe it, but a normal fashion, I suppose. Like
Okay.
would you agree with me that there's at least some sense of tension still existing in this country?
Tension, yes, I would certainly agree, especially
Right.
considering what happened in early January.
Right.
Um,
So I don't think that those are all coincidences. I think that there's something happening that's a little bit more beyond the typical perception of what an election typically is. Let's put it that way.
sure. Do you want to just give me a couple examples of kind of the discrepancies that you're seeing?
Sure. Um, Case in point, I mean, right, even in the build up to the election, one of the things that just stood out to me, where I was just like, look, that's a huge red flag, is all the mail-in voting. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this virus that happens, and when does it happen? the year of an election of the most powerful country on earth. That's a red flag to me.
Mhm.
And it's under the administration of the most contentious president I've ever seen in my lifetime. And yet, in my personal opinion, being again where I think to look to things in the middle, I follow policy. I don't care about theater. Let's put it that way,
Right.
political theater. And almost every policy he had, not all of them. There are, a couple. I mean, no one's going to agree on everything. But I would say 90% of the policies that he had, I agreed with. And the biggest issue I saw was that it just seemed like there weren't people actually keeping in track of that. The media was totally just on their own rampage against the guy. Anyway, so building up, there's this virus that happens the year of the election, big red flag. Then there's all this mail-in voting, which is just rife with fraud. There was actually an interview with oh man, who was the head of the Department of Justice? I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah, it's escaping me here too. Hang on. DOJ head during election.
Bill Barr. Sorry.
Oh yeah. The Attorney General.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so he was in an interview with CNN talking about it, and he was just like, "Look, you guys are playing with fire. You guys are opening this election, the election of the most powerful country on earth, to wide, vast swaths of fraud, and that's not going to fly in the United States." And I personally agree with that. I don't think that just because in the event of a suspect pandemic, in my opinion, that we should be overhauling the entirety of our system to try and, it seemed just very, very suspicious. Let's put it that way. So,
Okay.
all right, I'm already seeing some red flags. I'm watching things very, very closely because I care about my country.
Mm-hmm.
And then on election night, right, we're seeing all of this, momentum for Trump that it seems pretty clear that he's crushing. And then all of a sudden, at about 2 or 3 in the morning, multiple states, all of them pretty much happen to be swing states, all stopped counting. And they all have their reasons and their excuses. Oh, this pipe burst. Oh, that. I mean, it's just like, give me a break. Like, we're already dealing with an election that is like it's on the line right now. There's a lot of people who love Trump, and there's a lot of people who hate Trump. In my personal opinion, the people who hate Trump weren't paying attention to the policy; they were paying attention to the media. And so on the night of the election, there's a hugely suspicious thing that goes on that makes me go, "What the hell is that?" And then the next day, everyone's just like, "Oh yeah, all those states where Trump had a lead, now it's Biden crushing." And what people don't seem to think, in my opinion, is that it's like they're like, "Oh well, the media kept saying that the mail-in votes would start to swing in Biden's favor," and I'm like, "Right, they told you that. You didn't just expect that. They were telling you for months to expect that. Why?"
Right. All right. So let me kind of there's a lot of points here to kind of dig through. Let me go ahead and
I know I'm giving you a wide swath here.
Yeah. So in terms of I mean, I'm going to go ahead and choose not to go down the who did the pandemic thing, because that's a whole other conversation that we can have. The fact is the pandemic is real. It exists. It's here.
Yeah, I don't question.
Yeah. And it did force us to even though it was a worldwide phenomenon, and I sincerely doubt, for all of China's flaws, let's to put it lightly, for all the fuckery that China engages in, to institute a worldwide pandemic that's hitting every country equally, more or less.
I would think that they would. If you look into what they do as a country, I wouldn't put it past them at all.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, this is kind of why I don't want to get down this, because the investigations are still happening there. And
I'd like to point out to your audience to look into that with is, why wasn't the original strain ever provided or a source of the virus ever found?
And I fully support investigating that. I think once we curb the ongoing, once the vaccine's out and we're able to curb the ongoing infections and deaths, I think then it will be high time to go ahead and investigate where it came from, what we could have done better, who's at fault, things like that. But in terms of priming one's audience, as you say, the mainstream media did, in order to say, oh yeah, we're gonna see a false red wave, and then we're going to see all of these ballots take place. I could make the exact same critique of President Trump priming his audience to expect some kind of fraud. During the 2020 campaign, since May of 2020, he tweeted the word rigged 75 times. During rallies and things, railed against the fact that the only way that he could lose would be fraud. The only way that he could lose would be if some electoral fuckery happened.
Right.
And then when he lost, he was able to capitalize on that. And I don't know if you've... I saw this on a headline or something. I didn't read the official story, but I did go look into it because I subscribed to his email chain because I like to keep up on the things that President Trump's putting out. And there's also archives and things that you can look at. Mm-hmm. In my view, saying repeatedly, and even into today, the election was stolen, the election was stolen, the election was stolen, donate to my PAC that is working to fight election fraud. Oh yeah, and if you look in the small print, I'm able to use half of that to pay off my campaign debts.
Okay, well, I would look to precedent as the argument against that. Did he use any of that for his first run? He paid for it entirely himself.
Did he?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the 2020 election. I'll have to look into that more closely.
Right, but I'm saying you're judging based on this man's character. That's what this whole argument tends to be around.
I don't care.
Is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? That's basically. I mean, he's going to be the president of the United States. That's what the vote is about. And it's, do we trust him? Yes or no? Again, your argument there is, oh well, he could just be doing this to funnel money to line his pockets. And I'm like, well, okay, then why wouldn't he have tried that when he wasn't already president? He was doing it on his own money. And then again, you follow his policies.
I mean, we can talk about how he funneled multiple millions of dollars of Secret Service money, of travel money into his own properties during the presidential election, for spending more time golfing than any other president in U.S. history. Certainly like 2 or 3 times more than Obama.
Why is that such a sticking point? Like, what is wrong with that?
Well, because he
golfs.
Go
out and golf. Have a good day.
That's fine, but when you're golfing during a global pandemic, when you're golfing during the most contested election in history...
If you want to go out and golf during a pandemic, you have my... it's a free country. You have.
It's the exact same vibe. Ted Cruz leaving Texas when they're in like one of the biggest crises that the state has ever seen. When others of his cabinet and other politicians within Texas are staying to help and actually cause positive change, he just dips. I get the exact same vibe from this. And then it's further complicated by the fact that he goes to golf with his Secret Service detail, with the other people that he's traveling with who have security details that are paid for by taxpayers, and forcing them to stay at his properties on the taxpayer's dime. I can point.
What about his salary?
Oh yeah, the $400,000 that he could have taken and then donated.
This argument is I think. Could there be reasons he's going to his properties? I mean, what's wrong with going to your property? Oh, it's because it's on the taxpayer's dime. Well, if he went to...
Because it's a violation of the emoluments clause. That's why.
All right, fine. I think that this is an extremely weak argument in terms of the scale of what we're discussing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's fine. We can back up to the election. This was kind of a tangent.
Yeah.
So by priming his audience using the word rigged... since he took office, the number is 157 times referring to the upcoming election.
Right.
He has claimed that 6 different elections from 2012 to 2020 were rigged. The fact that his own Supreme Court nominees rejected 2 of his lawsuits brought against it. Mm-hmm. The fact that they put forward 62 election lawsuits and he lost 61 of them, and the only one that he won by was because they were contesting, I think it was Pennsylvania. And it was a case that only affected a couple hundred mail-in votes out of the 81,000 that he lost the state by.
Sure. So
I think that we can, and I'm not saying that I do not trust or watch the mainstream media at all. Let's put that in. I'll put that out in the open. Mostly, I rely on independent journalists, independent journalism. AP is a good example. We can use those pretty reliably. So I don't trust the mainstream media as quickly as we can, or as far as I can throw them. But if we're in terms of priming one's audience to expect a given result, I think both sides did.
Sure. Okay. So then what I would say is that you have, you yourself may not be, and this again, it is true for both sides, but then again, it just comes down to a question of the character of the man. Who do you trust more, the media or Trump?
No, I don't give a shit about the character of the mainstream media. I don't give a shit about the character of Trump. I care what kind of harm they're putting forward into the world.
What? I mean,
I
okay.
didn't vote for Biden based on his character. I fucking hate the guy.
I don't
I put him.
understand what harm did you feel Trump was bringing into the world then?
What harm did I think that Trump was
What? Yeah.
instituting? Instituting things like a Muslim ban, racist immigration policies, things like that. Instituting, putting people in office into cabinet positions for the express reason of destroying putting a gas and oil executive as the head of the EPA, putting a gas and oil executive at the head of the State Department.
Right. My question then to
Mhm.
this all these things is like, what is he actually trying to do potentially? Is he trying to build up these systems or take them down? And some people would say, "Whoa, if he's trying to take them down, what are you doing? That's a bad thing." That's not necessarily true.
Putting someone into a position doesn't mean building it up. I mean, we can look at the guy that
no,
he
you're
put in.
saying that it's someone that doesn't have the values that would fit someone. If you're not
No, I'm talking
a
about people who have a
environmentalist being
vested
the head of
interest. I'm talking about
right.
people who have a vested interest, especially in the case of the EPA,
Oh, okay.
in in hamstringing these organizations.
Right, but you have to ask the question of, is the EPA even good for us? Is it actually accomplishing what it's meant to do, or is it one of those parts of government that is really just there to enrich themselves and be a system of control? If you look at what Trump is doing overall, he's trying to deregulate the government. He was trying to break it down to make it more efficient. Right, it got too big. Let's just put it that way. Right, on a macro scale. So and a lot of these things again, it's just like what did he do? What was so bad? Well, for one thing that he didn't do was start a freaking war. First president in about 50 years not to get us into a conflict. I
He
give him
didn't
all the credit.
start a war. Drone strikes went up under Trump. We're still bombing children's hospitals in Yemen.
Okay, but who started that? Once you break the
I
egg,
don't
you got
care who started it. If
you
Trump
should.
continued, I do care who started it. Obama was a piece of shit. Bush was a
That's
piece of
strange. I
shit.
mean, you didn't, and then you do.
I didn't, and then I do
Okay,
what?
so we agree that all these people are pieces of shit. So we're on the same
Oh yeah,
page with
certainly.
that. What I just don't understand is that it's like, uh, Trump becomes the first one in the media who gets treated like a piece of shit, and you buy it. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Trump is the first one that is actually doing good things, in my opinion. And maybe that's the reason why the media is treating him like shit, because they don't want you to know it. So you have Obama, who is treated like the star child of the world.
By
And
some
you have,
outlets.
oh, come on. I mean, pretty much everybody.
I am old enough to remember when Fox News went after Obama for wearing a tan suit.
Yeah,
The
I get
reason
it.
he's
There's
lambasted.
always these little stupid things, but I'm saying in terms of real hard policy, nobody ever got on this case. What about Obamacare? That was a nightmare.
Yeah, and he got
all
lambasted for it in the right
right,
wing
he should
mainstream
have,
media.
but
Yeah, I agree.
right wing mainstream media. Why not left wing? Why aren't these people saying, "Hey, these are actually"? I just don't get it,
Because
man.
they're
Like it's just
libs.
nobody. No, I don't. There's something bigger going on in this country than I think people have the perspective to really understand, in my opinion. Or not that they haven't been exposed to the information. I did a lot of digging, and I feel like I know what is really going on. And I don't think let's drive this back to the election here a little
Sure.
bit. We had all these fraud claims and all these things, and then you have every system of control more or less, right? That's within the people's control. That's a key point here. Within the people's control, the people's purview, you have the media saying no, that didn't happen. You have all the defense, or not defense, excuse me, all the courts and stuff like that. What's that called? Judicial. Everything judicial was saying no, it didn't happen. And yet we had people like Lindsey, or what's his name, Lynn Wood.
Oh, Lynn Wood, yeah.
No. Yeah, Lynn Wood, who was, if you guys remember the CNN story of that kid whose name escapes me, but the kid, there was that CNN story where there was like a kid that had a MAGA hat on, and you had a Native American, and they all said, oh, the kid was harassing the Native American. It was a total lie. The Native American walked up to the kid and harassed him. Lynn Wood got him off with 100 some odd million for defamation because they basically ruined that kid's life. Why the hell did they do that? Because they wanted you to hate Trump. I mean, they're literally making things up. They're lying to the American people, and I'm not okay with that. So I started saying, what the hell is actually going on here? They really want Trump out for a reason. Anyway, so then we get back to Linwood. He's saying election fraud happened. I trust him because he fought the media and all this BS. And then we have Sidney Powell, who's another lawyer who's been out with the Trump team saying, yes, this really happened. There was a raid in Germany for these servers where like we have the data and all this stuff. So then the question becomes like, okay, if these people are not backing down, they're saying, no, this is true. And every system of control that is within the people's power is failing. What does that tell you about the system?
Well, first of all, are we talking about the exact same Lynn Wood who doxed the officials that were trying to disbar him to QAnon supporters?
He doxed them? I mean, he said their names.
Yeah, let me find it. I've got... Yeah, so inciting some kind of response against them while the disbarment's
or just calling
out
the truth, saying, "Hey, these people are trying to disbar me." You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Pro-Trump lawyer asked an army of patriots on Telegram to dig up dirt on officials who will decide whether he's disbarred or not. Yeah,
right. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm fine with that. If they go to violent means, yeah, you have my.
I mean, talking legally, that's interfering with a federal investigation.
How so?
Or sorry, a state investigation, not a federal investigation.
How is that interfering? He's
because
saying,
you're
hey,
sicking...
this is what I feel. This is what I feel. I'm using my freedom of speech, and in response to my freedom of speech, these people are trying to disbar me.
Right. So
what do you think about that?
So let's say AOC, right? I think I can safely assume that you're not the biggest AOC fan, right?
Yeah, I'm not.
So if she was under some kind of investigation in New York for malfeasance, and she tweeted out, say, hey, Antifa, these are the people who are investigating me. Find me everything you can on these people.
Yeah, if they actually would do
that. Here's where they live.
And harass those people, which is the pattern that I've seen. There's a big, clear difference of behavior on both sides.
Right. So you're saying that you wouldn't support that kind of behavior, yeah?
I would. If they wanted to go out there and do some research on those people, I'd be 100% fine with that. If they wanted to go out there and harass those people, tear down their shit, yeah, I'd have a big problem with that.
Okay.
So then what happened to those people that Linwood, posted those names about?
So, well, they respond to things like tyranny is lost and now rebellion is duty. And the 4 boxes of the Constitution are the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box. Essentially calling for violence against these people.
Did they?
No, and I'm glad that they didn't. But
right. So then let's just cut the line there. That there is a clear difference.
I mean, that's one reading that you can take of it.
I mean, it's not the reading, man. It's reality. It's what I see.
Incitement of violence.
I mean, you can say incitement as many times as you want, but there's a difference between incitement and doing it.
Yeah, and there's a difference between there's a difference between attempted murder and murder, but they're both still crimes, yeah?
Sure, but one is about perspective. Like, no, because inciting violence is all about your perspective of what the person's intent was by, expressing themselves using their free speech. So you're saying that he used that free speech Linwood in this case, to incite violence against those people. But I'm saying, well, no violence occurred. So how is that your conclusion? Whereas there's the opposite going on very often where violence does occur. And I'm saying, okay, well, then maybe there's, why don't we see such an outcry on I don't hear anywhere near as much of an outcry. In fact, for months we were sitting back watching TV, seeing peaceful protests, quote unquote, where I think it was about 40 people were killed in the streets. Yeah, I have a big problem with that.
Out of 3% of violent protests, not counting including the ones that were instigated by police, out of thousands and thousands of international BLM protests. Yeah, there's going to be some people who get hurt at those.
And you're just okay. So that's okay. Sure.
I'm not condoning that. I fully disavow anyone who does violence or property damage at any of the Antifa or BLM rallies. I don't think that is a
Fine.
good thing to do, and it was obviously terrible optics because it allows right wing nuts on on OANN
Right, but
and
it doesn't
Newsmax.
allow the media. The media doesn't say that, and you don't have Biden
Yeah,
coming
they
out just
absolutely did.
condemning it for months. No, they did not.
Yeah, and you
Like,
didn't
dude, they
have
called it peaceful
Trump
protest, quote
condemning
unquote.
right wing mobs. I think it would be bad optics for either of
Where were
them.
there right wing mobs? Where were there right wing mobs tearing down streets, looting stores? Find me the footage, man. Find it for me. I can't
I
do
can
this
find you
anymore.
footage from Portland. I can find you footage from
The footage in Portland was mainly Antifa and BLM. It was
mostly,
bunks.
yeah, through the summer, but there were several in retaliation. There were several Proud Boy rallies. There were several there were
Right,
like MAGA
rallies.
truck rallies
They weren't
where people got
right, and
killed.
they're not tearing shit down.
They were in DC. The Proud Boy rally in DC. They engaged in several
So you have one,
instances of property
maybe. I
damage.
don't even know. I don't have the information on that. But let's just say, I mean, man, look, we can talk about this. There's one example here, but I'm saying there's a myriad of one on one side, and there's a couple on the other.
Yeah,
It's
because
just
there's more people who support
there's
BLM than right wing causes.
you don't know that that's true.
I do know that that's true. Just based on turnout alone. I mean, it's not necessarily.
I think that's a misguided conclusion, because based on turnout alone, what's been the whole term of what Trump supporters were called?
Uh,
The silent majority. In my personal opinion, people who are a little bit more in touch with what America is about understand that violence isn't the answer, so they don't go out and they don't cause violence. They sit at home and they let the craziness happen, and hopefully enough people wake up.
yeah. So I mean, again, this is probably a difference in reading, but by that logic, they don't think that it's successful optics to get up and do anything about it. Yeah. Silent majority. Dylan18 in the chat says the silent majority who got less votes in the election both times.
Again, less votes in the election both times. Are you talking about the most recent election?
And 2016, I think.
Well, how would that be the case in 20? Oh, okay. Oh,
because
so
he lost the popular vote. Yep.
Right.
Received fewer votes overall.
Popular vote, if that's a conversation we want to have, the popular vote is something that was, look into what the Constitution is and why it was written the way it was. The Electoral College has a purpose. I'll leave it at that. So popular vote, I just think, is a non-starter. That being said, I think we'll actually come to find, sometime in the near future, hopefully, praying, that Trump actually got the popular vote. But again, that's based on my presumption that this was in fact a rigged election.
Yeah, sure. And that's a good transition to kind of get back to the heart of the issue here. So here's the pattern that I saw. So you insist that the voter fraud did occur and that it's being suppressed in some way. Would that be an accurate characterization?
Yes, you won't see this in the mainstream media. You have to follow the people who are in the fight. Let me put it that way. And these are people that I have, we both agree that the media is untrustworthy. These are people that I've looked into their records. I've looked into what they do. We have. I
can counter this point without talking about the media at all.
Sure. What's that?
So here was the pattern that I noticed based on just court reporting. What would happen is Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood, they would all come out and say, oh, we've got this evidence. We've got these court cases active. That we have very, very clear evidence that this was stolen. And then they get into the courtroom and the judge says, okay, where is your evidence? And they say, oh, well, I've got some text from the affidavits here that they provided specifically for Michigan here. Katawa, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. One Republican poll watcher complained that workers were wearing BLM gear and she thought that one of them had followed her too closely. Another Republican poll watcher complained about the loud public address system. Workers were using it to make announcements and it was very loud and distracting to those of us trying to concentrate. I can estimate that at least 80% of military ballots I saw were straight ticket Democrat or simply had Joe Biden's name filled on them. So they bring out these 238 pages of affidavits from all these Republican poll workers, which are signed affidavits, but they aren't legally binding. You can just write an affidavit.
That's not true. An affidavit means if you lie, you go to jail.
No, that's not true. At least as far as I know. I'm willing to go ahead and Check it out.
That's what an affidavit is, man. Like, you sign an affidavit, it's
Is
a
an
legal document saying that I
affidavit
attest that this is the truth.
legally binding? It's subject to being charged with perjury if the affidavit contains false information. Yeah, okay.
Guess what
So
happens when you get charged with perjury? You go to jail. So you're saying that all these people, just because they're conservatives, were lying?
no,
And, like,
not at all. So that wasn't that doesn't discount the larger point that I was making here. So even if they didn't lie on these, none of these are illegal. These are all like 80% of military ballots were state ticket Democrat, the public address system, wearing Black Lives Matter gear. I've got more here if we'd like to read them out. But what they do is they come into court, they show these affidavits, and the judges go, "Well, that's not illegal."
right.
Mm-hmm.
This was my larger point that I'm trying to get at, is the people need to start realizing that the system is the problem. That it's not necessarily that
What system? What problem is there when people sign affidavits for
what
things that aren't illegal and they get thrown out of court?
what I'm saying is if you have all these affidavits that are signed, thousands of them, and you have these lawyers up there that are saying, "Hey guys, wake up! The system is rigged." Like, to in the Department of Justice, in the executive, everything, the whole thing is basically, it's become corrupted, which is what happens to governments. Like, this is why I don't think it's that far fetched. Everyone's like, "Oh, America's this great, wonderful place that nothing bad is ever going to happen." No, dude, this is the real world. Things happen. Sometimes they're slow. Sometimes they're we don't necessarily see them, but I think America is waking up to this, and there's something going on a little bit bigger. So what is, in my view, going on is essentially, again, the American people are starting to see that the system is rigged and that there's a problem with it, and that's why all of those court cases didn't work out, is because they don't want them to.
What?
They want.
So
I know.
here's
It sounds nuts, but
no,
this is
I don't think you sound nuts. My concern is if they say that they have the evidence and they say that there was proof of malfeasance, then they should present that malfeasance in court, but they simply aren't. They don't get, if they had evidence of widespread voter fraud, of these Dominion systems being rigged, of votes coming in from Venezuela or wherever from Hugo Chavez, then they would have then they, if they're willing to go to court over it, they should bring something more substantial than these affidavits that just say, "Hey, this person was wearing a BLM sweatshirt."
I agree. I think that is
Mhm.
a poor argument. And hey, man, I've been sitting on the edge of my seat for the last few months, waiting for that to happen too. So I'm with you. What I'm saying is that I think there's a reason it's not happening, and it's you know I don't know how to, like, navigate this without just going super deep.
I mean, if we're going to, if you and I were to agree that widespread election fraud to the scale that it would change the outcome of the election were to have happened, there are certain things that I would need to have presented to me. All right? I would need to have presented to me something like, "Oh yes, the Dominion systems were rigged. Oh yes, there was, or there were, let's say, 1 million ballots from dead people in Michigan."
Sure.
Something like that, like some kind of reasonable piece of evidence, right?
Right.
But they haven't presented any of that. So
You're right,
if
and I agree with you.
if
I
we're
think
gonna
that
have a
that's
reality-based discussion about this, they've got to bring something that is reality instead of just going on TV, lying to the American people, and then going into the courtroom and backing off all their claims.
right. I hear you. And so this is this. I'm going to start getting into a little bit more of the what I could say is going into the realm of things where it's like, okay, is this a normal year election or not? I don't think so. So what I see happening is that there was an executive order signed by Trump in 2018 after the 2018 elections. Uh, what happened in 2018? Well, that was the elections for the House and everything that happened.
Yeah, the
then.
midterms.
Right. So the timing of that, to me, says, okay, they learned something. They were waiting for it, and then they learned it. What was that executive order? I don't know the number of it. Sorry, guys. You have to, do that.
I can look it up here. Hang on.
Yeah. The purpose of it, though, is to essentially get the military intelligence, the all of the branches of intelligence, let's say, in our government.
Yeah,
They had to get a report.
Here, imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a United States election. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah. So again, that's a big red flag to me. It's like, okay, this happened right after the last election. In my opinion, what that is that's a signal saying like, hey, get ready for this. We just learned something, or we're preparing for it, what have you. That report was supposed to get to Trump on December 18th, I believe, and it didn't. It was postponed. It was postponed until January 19th. So January 19th, the day before the inauguration of Joe Biden. Seems like kind of suspicious timing to me. And in the event that the, transfer of power between executives isn't confirmed to be authentic, to be legal, who then takes power?
And let me just look something.
Did I break up with you?
No, you're okay. I heard you.
Okay.
Sorry, I heard everything that you said. I'm following up on this. Did he receive that report?
He did on the 19th.
So Trump received the report on the 2020 election on November 19th, right?
That's right. No. January 19th.
January 19th. Gotcha.
Yeah, the day before Biden was inaugurated. So
what
it's
does
just
it say?
like
Within
cutting it pretty darn close.
It says within 45 days, so that was well within the executive order timeline, right? By his own executive order, it says not later than 45 days after the conclusion of a United States election, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the heads of any other appropriate executive departments and agencies, shall conduct an assessment within 45 days. The Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security shall deliver to the President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Treasury and Defense a report evaluating with respect to the United States election that is the subject of the assessment described in Section 1A.
Right. So on January 3rd, then 45 days is like I said, like December 18th or something. I don't remember exactly. Maybe December 19th.
From November 3rd, 45 days would be 45 days from November 3rd. Yeah, it would be Friday, December 18th.
Right. So then that didn't occur. It was postponed another month, and it occurred on January 19th, the day before the election. Again, it seems incredibly suspicious to me in a certain sense, where I'm like, okay, this executive order was signed, then it gets postponed, and then we get to Biden being inaugurated. In his inauguration, there were a certain few things I saw that made me go, that's interesting. Case in point, he wasn't given the 21 gun salute, which is ceremonial, let's say, for that. And the National Guard had their back to him, which is not what you're supposed to do to your commanding officer. So that to me makes me think, okay, he's not in power right now. And again, if you have a executive that isn't necessarily a legal transfer of power, the power doesn't go to the next executive until we know exactly what happened in this election. The power is, I think, but with the military, let's just leave it at that, and that's why we have a military control, more or less, in the Washington.
If we're talking about a legal transfer of power, the 21 gun salute, the ceremonial stuff, the direction that the National Guard are facing, those aren't outlined in the Constitution for the lawful and executable.
Sure. But
transfer
I'm
of
saying
power.
that you're seeing a pattern here of so many things changing in the most contentious election ever.
Yeah, because
in the United States history, and
because it's happening in the middle of a pandemic, like it was going to be different. Yeah.
No, I mean, come on.
So here's
I think that's just not digging enough.
I mean, you can say that we haven't dug enough. I've done a good amount of digging on my part. I mean, I'm showing my research doc on screen that I've prepared for this, but just because the questions that you're asking don't have the answers that you like doesn't mean that you like keep asking more questions. You got to be asking the right questions.
Oh, I think I'm asking the right questions.
I know you do, but here's the again, if we're going to speak from a realm of reality, we've got to look at the things that are based in reality. And
I mean, that's so interesting because it's a power move you're playing on me right now, just saying that your version of the truth is reality.
No, I at no point did I say that my version of the truth is reality. I'm not professing to know shit. Yeah, I said if we're going to talk from a realm of reality,
Right.
If I
What did I
feel
say that was beyond reality? It was maybe beyond your understanding, but it's not beyond
you're
reality.
presenting to me your evidence for the fact that Joe Biden is not lawfully president is that the National Guard was looking the wrong way.
I presented much more than that. I'm just saying
You
that there are
did. It was
patterns
that
here.
was reductive. You're correct. But when I present to you that Trump's own lawyers went to Trump's own judicial appointees and said this election was stolen, here's these affidavits, and the affidavits are nothing, and they're not illegal, and they don't tantamount to voter fraud. I mean, I've also got a link to the voter fraud database here that outlines every incident of voter fraud in the 2020 election. It comes out to a couple hundred votes, and half of those were Trump votes. And most of them didn't even get to the vote counting. They were voter registration errors. They were discrepancies and clerical errors in the way that people were tabulated that made them look like dead voters. We need to operate on the information that we're being given. And you
No, I
can say
understand.
that the election was stolen, but then why can't that be proven in court to Trump's own judicial appointees?
Pardon me, my dog just came down.
Oh no, no
Behind
worries.
me. Uh, so look, I get it. I understand what's going on, and the especially in a free country, right? This should not be the way things are handled. Is that we don't know what's going on. What I would say is my concern is that why don't we know what's going on precisely? And you could say, well, all this evidence hasn't been presented yet. Well, I'm saying no. There is another story here going on where evidence is being worked on, and it's not in the public eye. And I'm very, very curious to know what that is. And I'm seeing the timelines that it's occurring on, and I'm saying this has my ears perked. This makes me go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, something's actually going on behind the scenes here. That's pretty interesting. And also, I do personally, as a matter of character, I have a real hard time understanding how the United States of America would put a man like Joe Biden, who is, has trouble finishing sentences, into the highest
Well,
office of the land, of the
he's had a
world.
stutter his entire life. I hate it when people
I don't
rag
care.
on him
I
for
mean,
this. We can
no,
criticize
it's
for Joe Biden. We can criticize Joe Biden for the shitty stuff he's done. When people pull out the fact that he can't finish sentences, it's because he's had a stutter since he was a kid.
fine. Uh, Regardless, I struggle to believe that that's what America chose. That's just my personal character here. And again, I'm seeing that there is very many things going on that are just very abnormal. Why is there, thousands of National Guard in Washington D.C., fences up in National D.C.? Oh well, the January 6th riot, which maybe we want to transition into.
Yeah.
But that's why they're there. Well, I'm not seeing anybody charging the streets, and it doesn't make much sense to me. Let's just leave it at that.
It. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
This
this is the way that it was said to me.
this is a good transition into the 1/6
Right. This
Capitol
is the
riot.
way that it was said to me. Look, if you if you have thousands of troops in Washington D.C. to protect an inauguration from the people, maybe the people didn't vote for you.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
I saw that post. Yeah. I've got it. I've got it here somewhere. We'll. Yeah. So to transition to the Capitol riot, the reason that they do have those fences is because the Capitol was breached, and we can now be absolutely certain, more certain than we were before, that there's a distinct possibility of an organized armed resistance to any democratic government function. Case in point, January 6th.
Armed, none of us had weapons. Well, none of us that I didn't see a single person with a weapon.
Oh, there
were people. I'm sure there were people. Yeah, that's not a. But what I'm saying is, it wasn't like we were brandishing weapons, charging up. And yes, for the audience, I was in fact there. And from my perspective, having actually been there, I was. In fact, Cody, can I send you? Or sorry, Chill Giant. I don't know if people know.
No, you get. They know my first name. You can refer to my first name.
I can send you if I can. I can send you some videos or something like that. But it was.
Yeah, I'm not saying that everyone. I'm not saying that everyone who was at the riot, but there were people
I'm just saying
who
the
were
majority,
armed.
man. Like, I did not see a single person brandishing a weapon. I did not see a single person. And literally, they're saying like, "Oh, we breached these lines." There were thousands of us, thousands and thousands and thousands of us, and they had maybe 50 people on a fence, on a bike fence. And I'm just thinking, this is the United States of America. They knew hundreds of thousands of us were going to be here,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the best they did. They didn't think that maybe we'd be pissed and that people would try to push this, or they didn't think that maybe there would be people, aggravators that would show up. They're either incredibly stupid or they knew it was going to happen and they wanted it to.
Here's my question. So the DC Metro Police were the ones that were there at the Capitol. The DC
Yep.
Metro Police and the Capitol Police.
They were offered help by the National Guard and they declined it. Why?
Well, let me ask you this: who is the? They were, from what I saw, Mayor Bowser requested the help of the DC National Guard, and they were denied the help.
No,
That's the reporting that I saw.
That's not what I saw.
Here, let me. Do you vape? No, I do not vape, and I do not advocate for vaping. Nightmarish Hero, welcome to the... Hang on, let me do a little bit of chat maintenance here. Nightmarish Hero, welcome to the stream.
What's up, chat?
Daniel says, what's up, chat? They can hear you. Riot 87, okay. Welcome to the stream. Star Slice, welcome to the stream. It's lovely to have you all here. And I'll get to chat questions here in a bit. I'll scroll back through and we'll throw out some chat questions.
Happy to.
Did Mayor Bowser refuse the National Guard? Let me see. DC Council's statement on the Department of Defense's denial of DC's National Guard deployment request. Today, the Department of Defense denied a request by Mayor Muriel Bowser to expand the responsibilities of the DC National Guard so that they would be authorized to protect and restore order at the Capitol building. That request was denied. The council is in full support of the mayor's request. We are appalled that this fundamental request was denied. We urge the DoD
What date was that?
This was January 6th.
So let me clarify this. So you had the Department of Defense turning them down.
Correct.
Okay, well then still why?
Let me ask you this. Who does the DC National Guard answer to expressly?
The United States president.
Correct.
Right.
So if the U.S. president wanted them to be there, he could have dispatched them, no? The DC National Guard responds expressly to the President of the United States, like you said.
Right.
So they can override the DC mayor. They can do whatever they want. The Capitol isn't the DC mayor's property. That's not their purview. They help with the Capitol Police.
I don't have the name or what it is in front of me, but what I saw in a report that made me go, okay, that's a huge red flag. And again, it just seems stupid. It seems like everyone is being stupid and they're not doing what is the obvious choice, where put the National Guard there, put the people there to make everybody safe. Mm-hmm. It seems like they didn't want to.
I agree.
Okay, so then when people start to say, okay, this is what really blew my mind. Is, again, I'm there and I'm living it and I'm seeing what's going on. We peacefully protested. Yes, we got actually I was on the front fence, so I'll send you the stuff afterwards. You can show it or something.
Sure. You can just send it via Discord if it'll come through.
Okay, cool. And the people were pushing a little bit back and forth, and then eventually people started really pushing, and then it went through. I actually backed off at that point and hid. There's like I don't know what you call it, like a stand or whatever, where they have the cameras on or whatever. It's like a gated thing, and I was just like, I'm not fucking around with that. But anyway, once everyone got through, I mean, dude, the police just stood down. They all were like, all right, like whatever, like.
Yeah, because there weren't enough of them, in my opinion.
100%.
Standing down, they just would have gotten run down.
Right. So I'm just like, okay, like clearly they're not prepared for this, or they just wanted us to let it happen. And then where it stopped was when I was on the front side, not the back where they actually got in. Where it stopped was, it was kind of, actually I was thinking it was like 300, like the hot gates. Like it was like they got into this area where it's like you get into the front entrance basically, and they all were kind of like huddled up like a phalanx, and they were holding us off, and we weren't. I'll be honest, I didn't want to go in because that's where I kind of drew my line. I was just like, look, guys, like we're already on the steps. I think we've made our point.
Yeah, that was a bad call. I think we can agree.
Well, I don't think going on the steps was a bad call.
No. Going on the steps is fine, but breaking in was a bad call.
Yeah, no. And here's the thing, man. There were people there that were trying to break the windows, and we all were booing them. We all were like, "Hey, dude!" And it was. I actually loved it because we were like, people were saying, "Whose house?" And we were like, "Our house," because it is. It's
Mhm.
the people's house, and the people are not happy. So we're saying, "Whose house?" Our house, and then there are people going up there trying to smash in the windows, which are bulletproof, so they're idiots anyway.
Mhm.
And we tore them off. We were saying, "No, like that's not what we're about. We're not about destruction. We're not about setting things on fire. We're, in my opinion, better than that. We're trying to do it peacefully. We're trying to do it through our bodies and through our voices. That's where my values stand."
Mhm.
I later came to find out that on the other side, there actually were people who did breach it, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I've also heard reports that there were intentional, uh, people were letting them in, more or less. And there's certain camera footage you can find of that where senators or something like that, I can't remember who it was,
Mhm.
but he opened a door, let people in, and like
Yeah,
it's just
and
like,
we can
okay,
also
again.
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert giving tours to the people who would later show up at the protest. It's yeah, it's
Bonkers.
yeah,
It makes no
it's
sense.
pretty obvious that there were parties who knew that this was going to happen and who were actively
Right.
advocating
So
for it.
you have people that know it's going to happen, and then you have the police being totally inadequate, unprepared, quote unquote, and you have the
Hmm.
National Guard getting turned down. It's just like, dude, I'm sorry, there are so many red flags going off in my mind that it just make me go like, none of this makes sense. None of this is America. So yeah, I don't believe it. I don't buy it. And it was a hell of an experience. It was and we weren't violent. I didn't see anybody getting hurt. In fact, there were people that, again, there was one guy that was trying to calm us down once we got to
Hmm.
the gates. Yeah, as I'll call them. I'll call them the hot gates, the entrance, whatever. He took a speakerphone. He came out. I have the video of it, and he said, "Hey guys, like we're stopping here. It's now a peaceful protest. Like we're just gonna chill," and that's what we did. And then eventually,
Hmm.
hours later, Trump put out a video saying, "Hey, everyone's, go home. Like things are going too far."
Yeah, go
Not
home.
and
We love you. You're very special. Please stop breaking into the Capitol.
Okay, I mean, there are people that were doing that. I wasn't, and
Hmm.
a
Yeah, I'm
large
not.
majority of
So
this room.
I'm
So I get it.
just
Um,
this is kind of a tangent, but I think we can agree that we can condemn the actions of a few
right,
within your ranks, while also acknowledging that the larger movement isn't condoning of that type of violence, right?
100%.
Yeah, cool. So why don't we lend the exact same standard to Antifa, yeah, and BLM?
I would. It's just that again, I see a pattern that is far more consistent
A
and
pattern of
is
1.5% of protests turning violent and only 40 people being killed at nationwide and international protests.
right. But I mean, look at the damage that occurred. Where show me that
Hmm.
on the other side.
I mean, we could.
That's there.
That's a much more nuanced discussion, and I think
How is it?
I think. Well, let me finish my sentence. I think the
Sorry.
nuanced discussion also extends to the folks at the Capitol. There is a distinct correlation between people being feeling disenfranchised and feeling as though the social contract has been broken in some way, and
I agree with
engaging in
that.
that type of property damage as a way to flout the ignorance of the people who support them.
I agree that there's an issue with the social contract occurring in this country. I just think that the reasons for it are not where people are putting the blame. I think that it's in large part manufactured by the way in which our government was running itself. Again, if you keep things tense, then you can manufacture hate within groups and all that stuff, and you can play politics in a really kind of nefarious way. But it's not good for the people, and that's what I think has been going on in a large way for a couple of decades in our country,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's I 100% agree with you that the government should be representative, and it absolutely isn't.
Right. So, look, we're on the same page with that. I think the question then is, and we're kind of discussing and trying to figure it out, is which side is really fighting for that standard?
Hmm.
And I'm seeing so many lies coming at Trump and his, followers
Like what?
about who and what they are. As I said, the MAGA cat hat and all that stuff that happened. Um, that Trump is the worst person ever, but he never started a war. We had the best economy in our history.
Again, I think I can't just let that slide. Him not having started a war does not mean that he didn't use the military-industrial complex overseas. He's said multiple times that we should engage in quote unquote humanitarian aid militarily in other countries and then have us be reimbursed with oil. He did ramp up drone strikes. He did ramp up. He took some soldiers out of Afghanistan and then immediately put them right back. I think characterizing it as, oh, he didn't start any wars, while technically correct, does not illustrate the totality of the ways in which he used the military-industrial complex overseas.
Okay, fine. Then let's talk about perhaps the Abraham Accords, which is monumental peace treaties that were signed in the Middle East.
Okay.
History. Nobody gave him any credit.
Yeah, you're right.
I
haven't heard of this or looked into this. Let me see.
And he was nominated for 5 Nobel Peace Prizes for it.
Is it Abraham Accords? Joint statements between Israel, the UAE, and the United States reached on August 13, 2020. Yeah, that I will have to look into a little bit later.
Sure.
Because that'll be a lot to read on. I'll keep this tab open.
Yeah, no. It's good reading. This is what I'm saying. Is like this is really what started me down this journey in some sense. Is that I was, in fact, I'll be honest. In 2016, when he ran for president, I didn't like him at all. I thought he was, bombastic, loud, and rude. But again, at that point, I wasn't invested in enough to really vote. I didn't really know enough about politics and everything. But as time went on, and I started to see, or care, I guess, and see what was going on in my country, I had to start learning. And what I noticed was, again, there was just a lot of good things happening, in my opinion. Case in point, the renegotiating of our deals with China. I was all for that. I thought that, yeah, we were really getting screwed, and this is what's really great is Trump tweeted out a tweet that I was just like, yeah, that's exactly where my values are. It was fair trade, and I was like, yeah, that's a great. I want fair trade. I think everybody does. I believe in the sense that a rising tide raises all boats. Right. A lot of his policies are in that line.
I mean, that's fine, and he can talk about engaging in free trade. The economic side of it, while I've been kind of skimming it, is not necessarily the thing that I'm most versed in. Which is why
you and your audience to look into it more, because at the end of the day, politics and what we look into for, I would say the social elements of where politics lies is actually, in my opinion, the least important. Right. Because the most important thing is that people have purpose in their lives, that they have livelihood. And another thing that Trump pushes a ton is, and I think that this is something that is really being stripped away in a lot of our aspects of our life, is faith and, God and being connected with more than just, the media and politics and all this stuff. It's become so much of what and who we are that certainly. We're not paying attention to anything else.
I mean, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? People should be able to pursue the things that they want, live in relative, what's the word I'm looking for? Dignity.
Yeah.
But the thing with that, I understand he's a businessman. I don't think that the faith has its place, and I don't. Organized religion, I do sometimes have issue with, but religion as a whole, I don't really have an issue with. I think that people should be able to follow whatever gives their life meaning.
That's exactly what he says. He doesn't say.
But I think that should be separate from the way in which we run our country and enact policy.
I don't, and the reason I don't is that it's written into our Constitution that there is a higher power, there is a God. And I think that acknowledging that is something that is important to life itself.
We can acknowledge it. I mean, we can have a nuanced discussion on how morals are largely shaped in some cases by a person's personal faith, and how that comes through in the laws that we put on the books. But they did also say within the Constitution that there should be a separation of the church and the state.
Yes, I agree with that. But there shouldn't be a separation of. I don't know how to just describe this, but I guess
Like we're kind of getting into the weeds on
yeah,
this.
I know. Yeah, where this is going. Yeah, let's steer it back to.
Mm.
Well, we talked about the Abraham Accords, which is
Yeah,
record peace deal.
which I'll have to look into.
Yeah,
I think
I'm trying to think of some other things. Oh, he did the reformation of prison. Can't remember what the hell it is. Sorry. He did the reformation of sentencing and stuff like that, and it's basically letting out thousands of people from jail sooner because their sentences were too long. They get to appeal it. I think it's like 7,000 people have been released already, and they're expecting tens of thousands more to go, which is a huge issue that I think we all agree with. We had a crazy, in fact, I think it's basically turned into a business with the amount of people we were incarcerating. Not something I think anyone has good values on, and he did something to change that. I'm all for it. He did the opportunity zones in mostly black neighborhoods, but just any kind of poor neighborhood to give you tax incentives so that business would be more encouraged to actually go there and start businesses, which is great, which is why we had the lowest numbers for unemployment.
Yeah, I think we can get into the weeds on this, but this is why I didn't want to get into there, because there's a lot of things that I do need to look at more closely. The thing I think that is the most prescient is kind of the fallout of 1/6, the fallout of the lies told around the 2020 election.
I'm not sure it is, though, because it's just like those things are all built on by having the knowledge that I'm trying to share. Because if you don't understand what we're fighting for, then you're not going to understand why that occurred.
Right. But I don't.
This is the question that I have for everyone listening, and you is, why don't you know it? Why didn't I? Why did I have to do so much work to get here? I don't think that that's how America should work.
I mean, I can make the exact same for all of the shitty policies that Obama enacted. Obama did some things that I don't necessarily disagree with. Mods, can we get a whatever mods we have hanging out? Mara, can you get on these folks? We've got some chat spam happening.
It's okay. I forgot I was supposed to send you something. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Wes.
Didn't seem to work.
It's fine. I'll let you folks figure it out. I got 2 mods in chat. We'll be fine. Hang on. Let me bring it to the courtroom. Anyone who's talking about vapes, you're getting banned. Wes is on it. All right. Thank you, Wes.
I'm trying. But my screen is
As for what I was saying, I mean, you can do 100 good things, but if you do one really, really shitty thing, it's going to overshadow that, right? Just if we're talking purely about optics, in the eyes of the American people, you have fucked up, right? That's what happened with Obama. Obama put in, largely.
You talking about me personally?
No, I'm talking about discourse in general. Like if you're at a job or something and you perform your job excellently, and then like you run a forklift into the steel and drop a bunch of product.
Right.
They're going to remember that over all of the totally fine shit that you did.
Sure, but if you're running that forklift into the whatever you referenced to save the whole company, I think it's a different perspective. For whatever reason, I'm trying to just run with the analogy you used, but it's. I just don't think it's exactly a fair estimation of what's occurring.
I think just to say in terms of optics, right? In terms of optics,
optics is a very important thing, and you're bringing it up, and I'm glad you are, because again, think of it this way: think of the perspectives that we had for BLM riots happening for about 6 months. BLM. I don't say riots. Sorry, the BLM protest, which in many instances I found got out of hand, and they were treated by the media in large swaths of public, exposure, were treated very. Laissez-faire. It was just peaceful protest, and yet there's cars on fire in the background and looting going on, and they're called peaceful protesters for months. Right. Then we have a single day, where you had people going to the Capitol protesting. You had the worst security detail for it, for how many people they knew were coming. And things get out of hand a little bit. I don't think, again, from my perspective, where I was, it was totally peaceful. Everyone was just, there to, again, make our voices heard. And then I go home and I'm seeing on the news immediately they're calling me a domestic terrorist, and I'm just like, what is this? Like, I can't even believe it. I couldn't believe it. I didn't go there. I didn't, to be labeled such a thing in such a fast manner seems like the biggest double standard I've ever seen. And what's striking to me is how many people I know who believe it.
I think the ethics of it, the ethic, we have to take into account the ethics of it here. In terms of the BLM riots, they showed up in their own communities largely to give sorry, my mouth is running, or my head's running ahead of my mouth here.
Sure.
They showed up largely in their own communities, largely unarmed.
As were we.
Largely.
Right. I was unarmed. I did not see a single person, again, brandish a weapon. Not saying
right. When I say armed, I mean typically when you see conservative action, they do tend to show up armed. It's just a Second Amendment thing.
Where do you see that?
I saw it in the.
No. I'm not saying like give me an example. I'm just saying who typically shows you that, and is there a reason they're showing you that specific instance all the time?
Independent reporting and on the ground live streams generally.
Right. Well, my point is that there's always, and again, that's a fear tactic to make you afraid of conservatives. That doesn't necessarily mean that the conservatives are, going to go out and shoot you. Again, show me the instances in which that actually
they
occurs.
do tend to be the ones who go out and shoot people, just statistically.
I think if you're talking about in a mass protest sort of sense, that's not true at all. If you're saying that they happen to be the people who own more weapons, then that's their right, and the fact that they use it to defend their lives is their right. So what's the issue? We brought up the issue of protesting in which their weapons are brandished. I don't do that. I don't necessarily like that, but I understand why they're doing it, and I'm fine with it as long as they aren't doing it in an actual way that is, going too far. And what I often see is that it's presented to us, the people, in a manner that is meant to make you scared of weapons. That's not necessarily what they're trying to tell you. They're trying to tell you that maybe the government is trying to gain control over the Second Amendment to a degree that is unconstitutional. People should look into that.
I mean, if we're talking about Biden specifically, Biden's already said that he does not want to take away anyone's guns.
No, I'm not talking about Biden specifically. I'm just saying in general, when those instances happen, you have to ask the question, why are they actually doing this? If you're just looking at the TV and seeing someone with a gun and being scared by it, I'm sorry. That's
right.
not
I don't think that's not what I'm talking. I'm not talking about media representation of conservatives. I'm talking about Department of Justice statistics. More people tend to get hurt at right-wing demonstrations than left-wing demonstrations. Like just by orders of magnitude.
I don't know any of those metrics, but if you want to show them to me, fine. But if you're just throwing it out there, then that's another thing.
That's the police 3 times more likely to use force against left wings. There we go. Business Insider. All right, fine. I'll pause my ad blocker. Look.
I mean, we don't need to go too deep into it. I think we're getting into the weeds of things.
Yeah, we are a little bit
data driven, and I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to.
New research based on almost 900 politically motivated plots and murders in the U.S. since 1994 found only one person's death in the last 25 years was linked to anti-fascists, and the person who died was the attacker. In comparison, over that same period, 329 murders were linked to the far right. When the label was broadened from anti-fascist to left-wing violence, it found 21 victims had been killed, compared to 117 in right-wing violence in the same period since 2010.
Okay, so I mean,
I'll
shoot you this,
but
I don't have this argument prepared.
That's fine.
Um,
Neither do I really. So I'm happy to go back to the things that we agreed to talk about.
So back to the riot. I don't
Yeah,
want to call
sure.
it a riot.
Back to the riot.
Yeah. Here, I don't know what to send you. There's one video I like because to me it touches on the values of why we were there. So I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick for you.
Yeah, sure. I do get so in terms of charitability, I do understand why folks were at the Capitol that day, and I think that while I firmly disagree, because it kind of hinges on the first part of the discussion that we had, which was whether or not the 2020 election had been stolen.
Right. So I mean this is I mean we're touching on sort of the same thing where it's just like that's the linchpin issue here
Right.
is like what do you believe? And I mean that's kind of everything, right? I mean it's what do you believe in life and what do you stand for? And what I just feel is that we're reaching a point in our country where people don't know anymore. They don't know
But
what's true.
Right, but
And
so here's the in the lead up to this,
Mhm.
we had. I mean, in the lead up to the November election, I think I put out a post. I was like, look, here's what, because I meant to bring this up during the election fraud bit. If you
Sure.
look at most of the states where we did have those big vote dumps overnight, where they switched to blue basically overnight. Most of those states, including Pennsylvania, including Arizona, including Georgia, I think Georgia had a law for this as well. They actually instituted a new law from the legislature, mostly pushed for by Republican legislators, that said that mail-in votes could not be counted until Election Day. They could not be opened. They could not be processed. Now,
there's also
go ahead.
more than that too, where the legislators actually changed the law to allow mail-in voting without. I can't remember. Sorry, I don't have the detail about this exactly, but there was something that happened in a couple of states, most of the ones that are contentious in this issue, where I think it was Pennsylvania specifically, actually, where they changed something without the legislators, and you need the legislators to do it. So that right there is unconstitutional, and yet we didn't
And then
see anything.
that was the so that was the one case that they ended up winning. They tried
okay.
to extend the period after Election Day where you could cure your ballot, quote unquote. I think they wanted to extend it to a week or 10 days. But then the court upheld that it was only 3 days, as was put forward before the election.
Okay.
Because that was what the legislators had agreed upon, and they tried to extend it without their go ahead.
Okay. So
So
are we going back to the election fraud, or are we sticking with?
I just wanted to touch on that. So
Sure.
they put these measures in place that mean that we can't count or report mail-in ballots beforehand. Like you said, all of us on the left and center said, hey, here's what we're going to see. We're going to see a huge surge in-person voting among Trump supporters, people voting for Trump, just because they tend to be less worried about COVID restrictions. Then we're going to see a large wave of mail-in ballots, and that ended up being exactly what came to pass. Even though I saw several, I think Ben Shapiro said this. I think Baked Alaska would have said this at one point, that the red wave was going to hold.
I mean, here's the argument that I'd have against. I want to touch on this now because I thought of it. Is that you say, all right, well, Trump did prep for them to say, for us to be wary and look for potential rigging, and so I was. That being said, man, like, look, I'm all for the Republic of the United States to work and for us to have a fair vote and everything. So if it does come to pass that I'm completely wrong in this, you have all of my support and everything. Like that's how I want the country to run. I think that's how everybody does. And again, that's why I think it's a very stressful time for everyone, because it's just like people believe totally different things right now, and that's hard. So anyway, the thing you said about, okay, well, I told you the media was basically prepping you to be, okay, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen is that, we're going to see this big wave. And they kept saying it. And I'm like, well, why are they saying that? And then you say, well, Trump was saying it too. And I'm like, yes, but they're talking about the area of which is up for fraud. They're talking about the mail-in ballots. They're saying this is where Biden will get his advantage. And I'm saying, okay. So
because more Democrats, more Democrats requested mail-in ballots.
Right.
We can see those figures as
doesn't
well by orders of
you-
magnitude.
You're sure fine, but what I'm saying is that you're still not acknowledging that that is the avenue for fraud. So you're saying, yeah, well, okay, more Democrats would do it that way because they've had a larger degree of fear for the virus, which is probably true, and that's totally fine. But that still doesn't acknowledge the fact that there is the potential there for fraud to be leveraged then for their advantage.
Yeah, and that, like, I'm not arguing with it, because I mean, we can.
Okay.
I don't want to go down this road, but we do have evidence that there was interference in the 2016 election. We knew that the election was rife for interference, and thus we had that 2018 executive order that instituted the close
actually
watching of ballots. We had the
quick other thing to touch was
Sure,
the
go
whole
ahead.
Russia thing turned into nothing. Remember that? I mean, we dealt with that tension for years in our country, and then nothing came of it. That another huge red flag to me.
That's
where I
not
was
true.
like, what the hell is going on? Yeah,
We
it
had
is.
we had
What-
dozens of credible indictments of Trump era and campaign officials, several of whom have now been pardoned, so they've admitted guilt. We have several
Why were they
reports.
pardoned if they were guilty?
You have to admit guilt in order to receive a presidential pardon.
My point. No, you don't have to be. I don't think you have to be admitted guilt.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
I
By
think you have to be
accepting the
convicted,
pardon,
right?
it is considered legally an admission of guilt.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if you're convicted, then if that's not true, that you were convicted but it wasn't true, and then you get pardoned, that doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty.
Right, but
If you
that's
wanna say
conjecture
legally,
at that
it-
point.
if-
That's conjecture at
Well,
that point.
right, it is.
If
This
you
whole
lose
thing
in
is
court
everything
and
is
you are
conjecture.
determined to have committed the crime that you're accused of, and then you say, okay, fine, I did it, to get a pardon, legally you're still admitting that you've done it. Like 3 times over at that point.
Matter of perspective and
People,
conjecture.
Hamman in the chat says people have turned down a pardon in order to not admit guilt.
Okay. So
We have dozens of credible indictments of Papadopoulos, of Bannon, of Roger Stone, of Manafort, of dozens of Trump officials who were in the campaign. We also have a report from the Mueller investigation and testimony from him saying we couldn't convict at this time because he's the president. And when asked if they could convict him after he leaves office, he said, yes, absolutely, we have the evidence to do that.
and that didn't occur.
Yet it's been like a month.
They just tried to impeach him. Why not do it then?
Because that's not the forum for an impeachment trial is not a criminal case.
I'm just saying that whole thing was a huge sticking point, and we started off his election with that. And what does that do? It sows doubt. Sows doubt in everyone's mind.
It sows doubt because he committed crimes. Him and the people.
You don't know that.
I
you
do
don't
know
have
that
any
because it was
proof. No, you
litigated
don't,
over
Cody.
dozens of cases in court. And several federal level
Did you watch
investigations.
the Mueller, testimony? He
I
didn't know
watched
anything.
every moment of every
And he
trial
didn't know
proceeding.
a damn thing. He was saying like, "Oh, just, let me look through this and stuff." I mean, it just
Yeah,
it
I
made no
don't
sense.
expect the guy to have everything of
He
the
should.
300
He ran the investigation
of the
for months.
300-page report memorized. That's why he brings the report with him.
It was well.
That's why I have a research doc in front of me right now. I'm not confident in myself to memorize all of this.
I don't have anything in front of me right now.
That's fine. That's a choice. I want to make sure that I do not perjure myself and I don't say anything incorrectly, so I bring a research doc. Robert Mueller doesn't want to perjure himself and doesn't want to say anything incorrectly, so he brings his document.
Matter of perspective. I want to move back to
That's fine.
some of the other stuff we were talking about. So, I mean, I don't know. What, do you have any questions about the January 6th thing? Because I mean, I don't really have much insight for you other than I disagree with the labeling that it was given in some sense, and I found it a suspicious way to.
I do have one question that I want your take on. Do you think there was Antifa presence there?
I don't know. I mean, again, what I'd say is this: like, I saw people knocking at the windows and like trying to knock them in, and we didn't like that. We booed them. We told them no. We tore them away, and there were people yelling at them saying, "That's Antifa." Do I know that? No. Like, I'm not going to say yes, that was Antifa. Could it have been a Trump supporter who was mad? Sure. I don't know. Like, that's not why I was there, and it's not why the majority of us were.
And we
So
have this isn't like a gotcha or anything. We do have confirmed, like, most of the people who have been, not most, all of the people who have been indicted, except for like that one guy, John Sullivan. All of the people who were investigated from the Capitol riot were there. I mean, you've got people inside the Capitol saying Trump sent us, right?
again, I'm not gonna say if they were or they weren't.
No, that's fine.
Um,
We also
and
have
you asked
there's
me if Antifa was there, and I said I don't
okay,
know necessarily.
that's
I'm
fair.
just saying it's not beyond the realm of possibility. I mean, it's just about strategy, right? So if you want to make Trump look bad, why not send people to be a quote unquote Trump supporter that aren't in fact? I mean, that's just like it makes
Right.
sense that people might try that. If that comes to be shown in the future, I won't be shocked.
Yeah, I think that would be like 4D chess. But
But I
I
mean, that's what we're dealing with. Yeah, I think.
what's what we're dealing with.
I think we're. I mean, in politics, anything's fair. Like people do all sorts of things. Again, this
Oh
is
yeah,
the United States that's on the line.
If you want to be a politician, if you want to have that kind of power over everyday people's lives, you kind of have to be a piece of shit, right?
No, not necessarily.
Not
In fact, that may be
necessarily.
one of
That's
the
why I
reasons
said.
that they
That's
don't
why I
like
said
Trump is
kind of.
because he's actually a good guy and they want him out. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's. I none of this hinges on the individual because I can't know what Trump's got going on inside his brain, right?
Yeah.
I can only know the things that he says openly and the policy positions that he puts forward.
Sure. And so to steer to the question with the Antifa stuff, I don't know. I'll tell you, the people that I interacted with were all very nice, very warm. We all were there, like saying, like, yeah, let's support him and see what happens. And then things got interesting, but things, in my opinion, where I was, didn't get out of hand. And again, I didn't send you that video, but I have the video of the. I sent you one, but and it's us saying like we the people.
Let me see if it's come through.
I sent it to you in your messenger, but
okay.
Sorry, I don't know if that works.
No, that's okay.
And then I have another one that I can send you where it's that guy who comes out that says like, "Hey, this is a peaceful protest now," and basically saying like, "Don't push any further." Like we got past the bite gates, which I thought was kind of.
Yeah, let me see if I can blow this up to a point where I don't show either of our Facebook info.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, I can.
Did I do it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is the video.
It's actually funny. There's a little surprise at the end.
Oh yeah, the TP roll.
Yeah. I forgot.
Yeah, people gonna TP, right? Any chance you get.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think we've kind of hit all of the points that I really wanted to hit about the election and the Capitol riot. I think the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is are conservatives being censored? Is censorship occurring on social media?
100%. It was happening all over on Twitter. It was. I mean, it's. I don't know how people can't see it happening. I was censored. My Instagram was taken down.
Did they give you a reason for it?
Yeah, they said that, I posted a picture of myself at the. Actually, it wasn't even at the Capitol. It was. Oh, actually, no, it was. I'm sorry. It was that video that I just sent you. And they said that was in like inciting violence or something. And I'm like, it's people saying "we the people," but again, we're labeled domestic terrorists day one, and people don't take any time to have this conversation, which I appreciate that you are, and thank you for that. And see, why was I there? This is kind of where I'm going with things. It's just like why is there this real big double standard that I see in this country, and I'm not necessarily on board with that for either side. I just don't like that at all as a precedent.
Right. So, do you believe that websites have the right to set up a terms of service agreement?
100%, but I do think that freedom of speech is being tailored for a particular political view in this country, and that I don't agree with. I think that we should instill something along the lines of an internet bill of rights, and we don't have that right now.
Doesn't the EFF have like an internet bill of rights in the work? That doesn't matter. That's tangential. But the so here's my view of things. Getting to use a technical term, yeeted off of a social media site. If you violated their terms,
my Twitter was taken down. That's too. So my Twitter and my my Instagram.
Yeah, and there was a big crackdown. I think the extent to which it hit everyday people may have been a bit far, especially if they took you down specifically for that video that I just watched. But in terms of like Trump and other prominent right wing figures, we can say Trump specifically. I've got several instances where he broke TOS.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but again, that's many of the things that we're going to discuss that come down to him as a person are going to be disagreements. So I'll just leave it at that.
Again, I don't necessarily have to rely on him as a person. The things that he has said on Twitter violate the terms of service that he agreed to when he began using the site. Twitter TOS violations.
There's actually, I would recommend this for your audience. There's a good Joe Rogan podcast about this where a guy named Tim Pool.
We're familiar with Tim Pool.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're not
and
a
Joe
fan,
Rogan.
I mean, he's not my favorite guy, but I like him. I think he puts up a good fight. Let's just put it that way. And they discuss this. They talk about how the terms of service for Twitter are strangely anti-conservative and do target conservatives. And look, again, I don't even like to think necessarily I am one. I'm seeing, I want fairness, and I don't see that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a good video if you guys want to check that out.
Yeah, I think I've seen bits and pieces of it. It was a little while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like
ago now.
I think it was longer than that. It was like 2 years ago.
Okay. How are who anti-conservative, man? Uncle Bard with the follow. Thank you very much. I think I can. Yeah, we still got the alert spam. I'll just read them out for now. Oh yeah, Hamman in the chat wants to know. Can you give us some examples on how the TOS is anti-conservative?
Oh man, there was one. I think her name was Megan Murphy, actually, which I happen to remember. But there was this woman named Megan Murphy who said something about like, well, it was in regards to like some of the gender stuff gender conversations that are going on politically right now, and I can't remember exactly what the circumstance was, but basically she just said, look, like you're, I don't know exactly what her terms are, so I would encourage you guys to look it up, but. Yeah, it was like something just saying like in her opinion, basically, you have to be a woman or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but it all comes down to her thoughts, like what she feels. Like very much in my opinion, that was freedom of speech, and it wasn't meant as hateful. It wasn't meant as anything. It was just her opinion, and she got banned permanently. And that's just like, what the heck, like you can't have an opinion around anything that's gender based just because someone else feels differently, and then the political view of that terms of service becomes clear, and it does seem like, okay, this isn't necessarily the way that our country should be going, in my opinion. Do you think that was years ago, and I only saw that get worse, and it happened to me. So now I'm saying, okay, there is a real problem here, and I don't think that it's just in the social media realm. It's occurring socially. It's occurring, just kind of, again, it's all about beliefs at this point.
Right. I think so. I recently had on Wednesday. I had a conversation with a friend of mine about the whole Gina Carano thing and cancel culture in general. Mm-hmm. I think generally when people get taken off of these social media platforms, and the reason that the reason that the terms of service are curated the way that they are is because the purpose of Twitter, the purpose of Facebook and Instagram, the purpose of Parler even are to make money. They're businesses. So if you are engaging in things that are largely seen as transphobic and that you could see large public outrage for, or you're doing something like instigating I mean we can talk about the morals and the intent behind it, but that in effect instigated a riot that killed 5 people. If that violates TOS, I'm fine with these people getting taken off the platform.
I saw none of that. I saw none of that when 40 people were killed in the BLM riots. None of it. So it
Well,
just makes me question that, because it's, again, you're talking about a standard where me, who I did not engage in any violence, I
we're
did not.
talking about
So
stochastic reactive violence versus planned instigated violence by a political representative.
that's much to your perspective of what you thought Trump was saying, and them telling you, which he was just acquitted for,
That's
that he was inciting that riot, and I don't think,
yeah,
or that
acquitted
protest.
for again, that was not a criminal proceeding or a legal proceeding, that was a senatorial proceeding. And we
Oh.
already knew they had already said beforehand, and several senators who were for all intents and purposes the jury of the trial met with the defense attorneys. We can't I think we can agree, and I think chat, let me know if you agree. I would love to see a criminal proceeding of this rather than relying on the senatorial proceeding as an admission of guilt. But if we look at the evidence put forward, even if we just look at the evidence put forward by the House impeachment managers, this thing would not have happened were it not for the propagation of election fraud misinformation and
To be determined.
which has been determined in multiple court proceedings.
I would just hold off. I would say that until we see the military intelligence report come out, then that is still, look, if at that point, if that comes out and that we find out, no, this nothing did happen, I'm done. But that's still
fine.
up in the air.
So
Right,
I take slight issue with that, because every time you specifically I can point to with this, and largely others, say, all right, this is the time. This is the time where we're going to learn.
I know.
This is the time where we're gonna hear something, where something's going to happen, and then it passes, and then, oh no, this is the date. Oh, this is what I need in order to, and then no, it doesn't.
You're telling me. I lived that, so that was not a fun experience at all. And I do, I'll say this to anyone, if anyone is listening that happened to be on that ride with me, I apologize. Like, it's tough, man. Like, I don't, if it's to the scale that I think it is, and then I'm just done. I'm done predicting anything. Let's put it that way. I just have a pretty large gut feeling that I know where this is going. But I would just say that, again, that's kind of the tether, the thing that I'm looking at, that I'm saying this is still something that's on my mind. Let's put it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
I won't say that that's like, once that happens, then it's going to happen. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine, and I think it is, and I think Ham Man in the chat as well a while ago said, what would be the point at which you would accept, okay, I've seen what I need to see. There was an election fraud, and I think I got into this a while ago. I said, all right, here's what I would need to see in order to believe there was election fraud. I think that's an important point to have internally.
I agree. I think that we all want the same thing. We want clarity, and right now there isn't any, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have the clarity I desire. And what I would like to see is, I would like to see the no more military, and I'd like to see no more military. I'd like to see people who are, I mean, frankly, I'm following people who are still saying, like, no, this is still going on. There are things going on, and we need to be prepared for it. But if the military desists and goes away, but I just heard, actually, I think there was a report recently that said they're going to stay in DC for the rest of the year, which is just making me going, like, what the hell is going on? Like,
well, what's going on is that we almost saw politicians die, and they want to make sure that doesn't happen. I think I
don't necessarily buy that. I don't think so. Again, when
we
I
can
look
be
at the military
okay. So
report being given in the 19th, and then you have a very questionable election occur, it seems to reason to me, just as fair as necessary, perhaps your point of view, it seems to reason to me that it could be that the military is looking into it to see, was this a fair election? If not, we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying, is it not possible?
Is what not possible?
Is that not necessary? Is that a potential that could be an equally potential circumstance that we're living in right now?
What it is? It's likely my fault, because it was a pretty long string of points before that.
Sorry. So
what's the example that we're giving here?
So I'm saying, in terms of, like, you asked me for something that I would look for that would kind of make me go, okay, yeah, like, it was a fair election, whatever, I'm done. For me, that would be, I would like to see no more military. And I mean, this is America. I don't believe we need the military to occupy a city to, maintain order unless something really big is happening. So it seems really suspect to me. And then in your question of like, okay, well, I don't know, man. So that seems really suspect to me. They said that they're going to keep them for a whole year. Seems really suspect to me. And then there's this military intelligence report that was provided on the 19th, the last day that Trump was president, quote unquote. We'll find out. And we haven't seen any clarity come from that yet, which makes me wonder if Biden is actually in control of the country right now. If he's not, we may see some interesting things. If he is, and it's all just for protection, I'm open to that too. I'm open to either. I'm just saying my intuition is leaning me in a different direction.
Yeah, that's.
And it's
you can
on me keeping a close track of what Trump was doing while he was president, which, I would encourage everyone look into the economic things he did and the policies that he instilled. They were largely good, or into the, again, he did a lot of good things, and it just seems like people aren't aware of it.
Right. And that goes back to the point. I think that the verifiably bad things that he has done far overshadow. I think that they've had much more of an impact, at least on everyday folks. And I'm specifically talking about the tax cuts and the bungling of the COVID response. I think those two things on their own far outweigh the other, maybe possibly the other the positive policies that supposedly I haven't looked into.
Well, I don't know. I mean, hey, man, I'm
but and all of that to say, I think if let's say we're looking at it from a normie perspective, we see an election happen where we have two sides. We have one person saying, oh, it's going to be rigged. The only way that I can lose is if it's rigged, who has said this about multiple elections in the past. And then we have another faction, including the mainstream media, who says, oh, we're going to see a red wave. And then because more Democrats tend to vote via mail-in because of the COVID restrictions, we're going to see a lot more mail-in ballots come in. And then that's what happens. And then he says, oh, well, it was rigged. It's exactly like I told you. And we've got evidence to prove it. And then they get their 62 days in court, and all of them get thrown out because they have nothing. And then we look closer into it, and he's continuing to say these claims, even though he's lost in court several times, even though the new president has already been sworn in. And we look into the the small print of his emails, of his campaign contribution website, and it says that he is legally able to pocket 50% of the proceeds that he gets through this initiative.
Say he did?
Yes, I did see an article. I didn't prepare it for this, but I did see an article outlining how much of that, because that's something that's legally required to be out in the open. I did see an article saying that he did. All
right, I have no insight into that.
That's fine. I'll see if I can find that article, and I'll shoot it to you after we get off here. Sure. But to
look, I mean, again, this is probably one of the most difficult times, I think, for a lot of people right now, because It's just like there is so much uncertainty right now, and I don't think anyone is enjoying it. So, I'm trying to find the answers that I hope will fix some of that, and I'm willing to look anywhere. I want to try to explore all of the options. So, you laid out your story, and it's one I'm familiar with. Like, I do understand that is a potential, but my question is, it seems to me that a lot of people aren't exposed to the other side of the argument, and I wonder why. So, and this is why I'm really happy to come here and talk, because it's like, look, there's a whole other side here that I don't think people are exposed to, and it's important. And the reason that they're largely not exposed to it is because of media bias, social media bias, all these things that are very biased and seem to be leaning in a very clear direction. And I have to ask the question, why? So
yeah, man, and
then there's all these irregularities happening in this, COVID election, all hate kind of craziness going on in this year, and it's just making me go, like, something's up, man. Like, I don't think this is a normal year in the least, and yet we're still months into this, and people are still holding strong, saying, like, no, there's something it's true. There's more going on here. Like none of that makes sense to me unless something really is happening.
Yeah, man. I had this. I made this point to the guy that I spoke to on Wednesday as well
Mm.
about the Gina Carano thing, because he had a different reading of that Instagram post that compared the treatment of conservatives in modern day America to the Jews under Weimar Germany. And he was like, "No, I think it's just the." I think the way that I read it is also important, and I think what I told him is, just because we can make a reach, just because we can ask those questions, doesn't mean that we're required to, for the sake of charitability. I I think that a lot of people are going to have a lot of views on some issues, but like I said, there's certain ones that are based in objective and observable reality, and there are some that aren't, right? If we had a discussion about astrology and, or is it astrology or astronomy? Is that the real one? The one that's not
Which one is?
the one that's not
Well, I mean, it depends on your definition of real. I mean, look, this is the difficulty with what we're dealing with right now, is that it's like perception is everything. It's how you see the world.
I think
So
it's
this
I
is
think
why
it's
I don't really like the terminology and the manner in which it's being used of like reality, where it's like, well, your reality is what you believe. So
my reality and
your reality is largely based on what you've been exposed to, and what I'm trying to expose your audience to is a new perspective.
my
And
reality is based upon I don't put anything on Facebook. I don't put anything out here that I don't think is bulletproof. And you saw me earlier.
Sure.
I put forward a point. You said, "Is that right?" And I was like, "Oh, let me see." And I looked it up, and it wasn't.
No, I understand. I understand. I'm just saying I'm putting out what I've seen, and it seems to be at an impasse in some sense, where it's like, well,
Right, but the things you've seen are there are voter fraud, and when I put forward my version of things and say, okay, we've got these 62 court cases that say
mhm,
that there wasn't, despite there being, a Trump appointee judge and Trump lawyers there,
right.
and they didn't find anything. And I say that there were multiple investigations into these highly contested districts, and they found nothing, even though, they were run by the Department of Justice, which was run by Bill Barr, a Trump appointee.
Right.
I don't see how there's any other explanation to continuing to question this other than, the media that you're exposed to, exactly like you said, other than you having been exposed to an alternate narrative that isn't necessarily based in objective fact, but that you've chosen to believe because it's convenient.
It's totally possible, and I'm open to that being a possibility. I'll just say it, like, I do think that there is another narrative out there. I mean, it's very interesting because narrative itself, it hasn't ever really been a political conversation until Trump came into office. I think that should be a red flag to people, that it should be something we should be exploring, multiple narratives. You have one that's very consistent, that is, much in line with what you and I think much of your audience would believe. That is, yeah, okay, all these systems didn't catch anything. But then you have a very large portion of America that doesn't believe that. I don't
Yeah,
know. I
and
think it was like
it's the
70. Please let
go
me
ahead,
finish.
go ahead.
It was like 90% of Republicans, and 30% of Democrats thought that the election was funky. Like, that's enough for me to say, okay, there's enough potential here. And yeah, okay, well, the systems failed, but I exposed myself to some other things that I do see as possibilities. I'll just say that, and I want to expose other people to it, just to say, look, keep an open mind. You don't necessarily need to, believe what I believe. I don't need people to believe what I believe. I don't like where we're at as a country, where if you don't believe what I believe, you're wrong. That's not healthy. That doesn't lend itself to a good country, and a good discourse. So what I struggle with is that that's where we're at. We're at a place where other people's opinions deserve them to be removed from their social medias, deserve them to be ostracized in their workplaces, lose their jobs, which just happened with that woman from Disney.
Hmm.
And it's just like, that is not an America I want to, I don't want my kids to grow up like that. No way. So I want to see this through to just know that this is the country I believe it is.
Yeah, man. I largely think that we should allow people who are doing good to continue doing good, and I think that we should disallow people who are doing harm from continuing to do that harm. And I think those are the processes that we're seeing taking place. By removing Trump from Twitter, we saw within a week, I think it was a 70% decrease in the spread of disinformative media. So like media sources that were verifiably false, media stories that were verifiably false, only had 30% of the spread that they did before Trump got taken off of Twitter.
Do you know that the six companies, more or less, own every single media company you consume?
Oh yeah,
Isn't that a huge red
that
flag?
that
that
I
maybe what they're
consume, or
telling you-
that normal people
everybody,
consume?
everybody, pretty much. Like almost 90+% of everything that we consume is in terms of media
Mhm.
is owned by six companies, conglomerates, and they all work together. They're all telling the same story. I beg the question, is that necessarily the right story that we should be hearing? And I don't think so. And now we're in an age of the internet where you can access different narratives. You can access different perceptions of what the world really is. And, could it all just be going down some crazy rabbit hole? Yeah, it's a potential. And, maybe that's where I'm at. But I'm seeing other things happen that, are happening in the media, but aren't what the media are saying. And then I'm seeing other narratives that are saying, well, this is how we see what the media said. And I'm like, that's more what I believe. So, hey, I would just encourage people to not necessarily stick with the normal means of information. Look out, explore, see what other people think. Try to disengage from the war of this. That's what I want. I want people to stop being so we've just gotten to such a divided point that I'm trying to, I don't know, bring it back together, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine. There's one of my chatters, 44. Thank you for being here. I think you're new. I don't think I've ever run into you before. Says the reason that exists is because of economies of scale, and the internet has broken that. It's so cheap to get behind a mic and talk about news, or to be a pundit and offer your opinion. And I think I largely agree with that. That's why I generally try to, it's all about primary, secondary, tertiary sources. The higher you go up, the more spin there's going to be. Which is why I think myself, and also you to a point, get our news from on the ground folks. We try and get it as close to the source as humanly possible.
Well,
Do you think
yes and
that's
no.
a good practice?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think you should expose yourself to as much information as you can to discern the truth. I don't think that you should stick with any one thing. And that's why I'm talking to you here, because it's just like, look, this in this country, you were given the right of free speech, use it. I think that in large part, the reason we're at the state we're at is because people started to stop doing that. They became fearful of, their own opinions and their own thoughts, because it didn't align with what became our societal values by some happenstance, I think by the government in some sense. And I'm not okay with the government running what I can say and what I can do. And I'm not okay with, media platforms doing the same thing. And they influence people. There's a guy, I can't remember his name. There's a guy.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you please go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the government isn't determining who gets banned off of Twitter. And the government isn't determining whether or not Amazon pulls the server license from Parler.
Yeah, well, that was another weird thing. Like, why the heck did they do that?
Because Parler was one of the main vectors for organization of the 1/6 riot. And
Parler was where people went afterwards. Well, after 1/6, and then we started getting taken down.
It was also that, along with Gab, and along with, I think it happened a lot on Discord, and it happened a lot in Facebook
you're saying
forums.
All those things, and you asked me for evidence of conservatives being censored. You're labeling them. You're just okay with it because you think that was in fact a large enough offense that action is okay. I don't. I think that that's exactly the problem. For people to be okay with that in our country, to me, is totally wrong.
Like I said, I like it, and I advocate for when people do good things, and I don't like it, and I advocate for people to be stopped when they're doing bad things.
I think if you want to beat bad ideas, you have to have better ideas.
Right. I'm not talking. You can have bad ideas all day long. I can't stop you from doing that. But when things are, I'm a consequentialist. When things that people are saying and thinking are leading to bad outcomes, I look at how we can stop the bleeding immediately, right?
Right, and I'm
And
saying that the best way to do that is to let it naturally happen and to beat it with other people talking it, like using
is
their own ideas against it. You can't just shut up the people you don't want to hear.
if after the Munich beer hall putsch we had just let Hitler continue to have his bad ideas, which is largely what ended up happening. If they had stopped him immediately, arrested him permanently, like sentenced him to life in prison after the Munich beer hall putsch, do you think the Holocaust would have happened? Like, if Francisco Franco
I'm not
hadn't been stopped
interested in it.
early,
I'm not interested in those conversations.
right,
I'm
right, right,
interested in a free speech conversation. This is about free speech.
right,
Free speech is a right in the United States of America. I think that it should be protected as such. And people saying, "Oh, well, you're inciting violence or you're doing this." Well, who draws the line? Who tells you that that's too far?
have you heard of Popper's
This
paradox
is
of tolerance?
why
No, go ahead.
this is
Sorry, go ahead.
no this sir, this gets down to what the founders. This is why they put it in place. They understood that this is a fundamental of how life works. Is that you need to let people speak. You need to let them share their ideas. And in a free country, yeah, there's consequences to that. Freedom's not free. And we're trying to control that, and I'm not okay with that.
I think I've seen enough of your Facebook posts. Do you believe that the information that people receive and become accustomed to can have a significant effect on the way that they act?
Sure, 100%.
Do you agree with legislating out hate speech?
No,
Okay. Have you heard of
because
Popper's?
again, the hate speech is trying to label a particular level of speech, and it's like, well, where who draws that line, you or me?
So you think in your worldview? I'm not trying to ascribe this to you. In
No,
your
sure, go ahead.
worldview, do you think that it is fine for the KKK to go around like mask off, fully open, like with their identities out in the open, and be able to say whatever the hell they want about black people being subservient to them and black people who disagree with them being lynched, etc., etc., all of the hateful shit that they spew all the time,
Well, if they say hateful
without
things,
fear,
sorry, go ahead.
without fear of repercussion from their employer, without any kind of legal repercussion.
Legally no. From their employer, I'm not sure. I'd have to do more research on exactly. Look, here's the thing. I think if you're an out and open racist, then I think you are. I don't like those people. Let's just leave it at that. And I think that those people will not be successful in life. And I think that they'll come to learn that by continuing to do it.
Right,
What I'm
but you
seeing
just
is that there's. Sorry, go ahead.
so but you just said that yourself that the speech that people the speech that people absorb and become accustomed to can have
Right.
significant impacts on how they act and how they engage with society, right?
Yeah, but what you're saying is that by hearing that, everyone's going to agree with him. I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true. I
I think
don't
that
think
better
that
ideas is what people are more interested in. I think people look for good answers, not bad ones. And guess what? Racism is a bad one,
of
in my
course, yeah.
opinion, much like white privilege, because white privilege is racist. It's all based on color.
Oh,
I
we
understand the
can have
idea.
this conversation another time, my guy.
Yeah, okay, I'll leave that.
Because I know that you know my position on this, and I think I know your position on this. If you'd like to come on another time and talk about that, I'd be more than happy to
Fine,
have
fine.
you.
Well, yeah, we're getting into the weeds.
But the no, I think that this is tangent. I think that this is related to our topic of the censoring of conservative thought.
Well, I would just like to finish. Like, there's a channel that I like called Hillsdale. People might write that off just because it's Hillsdale. But again, I would encourage people to just expose themselves to other ideas. You don't necessarily have to believe it, but they have something about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and it walks through like what are the values? Why were they instilled? What was the purpose for it? I feel like a lot of our country hasn't explored what the original values were and why they were put in place. Our founding fathers took a lot of time to think this through. This was the first. Well, it became the real big free country of the world, and there's a reason for that. We should understand that and not necessarily just kind of try and change everything very suddenly because we're now in this new internet culture and things are different and strange and we're trying to figure it out. I get that, but there are reasons that those things were put in place, and they're important to understand.
Right. So let me kind of backtrack to the point that I was about to make.
Sure.
As you said, the information and ideas and speech that people become accustomed to can lead them to have changes in their behavior.
Yeah.
So if we allow, let's say under Weimar Germany was one of the most socially progressive and socially liberal societies that the world's seen. Right, I second probably only to what we're seeing around the world today. They were fine with people engaging in homosexual behavior. They were fine with people largely. I'm talking about larger cultural shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Post Munich beer hall putsch, when Hitler put out Mein Kampf and people were more exposed to these ideas, when he was able to take his platform and spout hateful things about Jewish people, people became accustomed to that. And I think it was Joseph Goebbels who said, if you can get people to believe absurdities, you can get people to commit atrocities. I think that was Goebbels. I may be wrong, but I know it was someone from
That's
that
fine.
era.
I believe the statement, regardless of the speaker, I suppose.
Right. So having those types of ideas just in the cultural discourse led more and more people. It was the I don't remember the exact German, but it was it led people to become, they called them little Nazis, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And it was people who, weren't necessarily out in the field harassing Jewish people, like pulling them out of their homes, beating them up in the streets, but people who were largely amenable to these ideas because they saw them as larger cultural trends that they wanted to be included in. Because humans innately want to be included in things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, so I understand your question, but it's just it's a fundamental thing where it's just I believe, this is my belief, that you cannot control bad ideas by trying to shut them
Right.
up. You can't do that. So the best way to handle bad ideas is with better ideas. You have to let freedom of speech run its. You have to let freedom of speech run its course. And one of the reasons Hitler did rise to power is because those people with good ideas were taken out and removed from their positions, or worse. So,
by the people with bad ideas, right?
Sure.
People were led to
can't-
commit atrocities by the presence of those bad ideas in society. Were it not for people being able to spread those bad ideas, people would not have become accustomed to those ideas being in the mainstream and would not have been, or at least I won't say that it wouldn't have happened, but would have been less likely to be able to commit those atrocities having believing those points, right?
I hear you, but I don't. I mean, people can hear bad ideas and they can believe them all the time. Trust me, I think that we're living through a lot of that right now. The way to fight that, fundamentally to me, is with better ideas. It's not to shut people up. To shut people up is then you're handing the keys over to whoever's in power. You're not handing it over to the people. So it's just not going to work ever in the long run, in my opinion.
Even if people are hurt in the crossfire.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying. Is like freedom's not free. Like freedom naturally is a process of, in some sense, chaos, but it is order as well. Like it's you have to understand that for freedom to function, you need to let other people speak. You can't you can't just say, oh no, you can't talk because you believe something different. That's all a matter of perspective. It all comes down to what another person believes. That's not fair.
Have you heard of Popper's paradox of tolerance?
No, but please share.
Sure. So Karl Popper was a philosopher. He put forward this idea called the paradox of tolerance, and it's that certain types of speech, like let's say the KKK, has a chilling effect on other people being able to express themselves openly. So in this example, it would be black people, right, in the U.S.
Okay.
So
I hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that because they do something so brash, it makes you feel like you can't speak?
Yeah, by having
their speech is so powerful.
By having an open and active platform by which you're preaching hate against, again in this case, black people are going to be less likely and more fearful of speaking up on the issues that interest them and on the ideas that they have.
I would encourage them not to be, and I don't think that this country.
You can encourage them not to be until one of them expresses themselves and gets lynched for it, like happened in the 30s and 40s.
Right, but that's not today. We're not living in that world anymore. And
Yeah,
I think
you
that
don't
if anything,
know that.
Yes, I do. Look at the. If you look at the, we're going to go to some good things metrics about the BLM riots. If you look at the, well, I'll do this actually probably for more of the protest. The
I'm saying
protest.
I was using this as
Well,
an example. I'm not
let me finish,
saying that.
please.
Go ahead.
No, no, well, I'm just saying that like we were talking about the black people and that like if there was a KKK member using hate speech or derogatory speech in some sense on his quote unquote platform, uh, how would you handle that? Again, I would say we all would need to conglomerate as a country and as a culture and say, hey, that's not what we believe. Shut the hell up. And you just don't listen to those people. That's what I do. I don't listen to people that spread hate. It's not good for me. I don't
That's
want to.
that's because
So
that's because you have the luxury of being able to ignore those people. For people
what
of
are you talking
minority
about? The
groups,
luxury. Everybody has the luxury to choose
black
into
people
whoever
during
they
the
want to
civil
follow
rights
in life.
black people during the civil rights movements did not have the luxury of being ignored lest we perpetuate segregation and Jim Crow laws and
Right. I
people being
understand that there
killed in the
was.
streets by their neighbors.
You're talking about something that happened 40 odd years ago. I understand that that happened. I'm saying that's not where we're
We're
at
still
today.
feeling the effects of that today. If we allow
Sure, you're
people
going
to
to feel
be
the effects of everything that happened in history forever, but you have to ask the question of is it good to keep holding on to those things and perpetuating those feelings when not necessarily everybody actually feels that way and treats people that way anymore?
is
I'm
it
not seeing that.
Is it good to take away a KKK member's megaphone in the form of a Twitter account? Yes, I believe it is. Because
I don't.
it causes measurable good in the world. It causes a measurable increase in the ability of people of minority groups to engage with their free speech rights.
I think it's more powerful to let that guy talk and to see everyone who follows him and be like, wow, that's a bunch of idiots.
So you would
Because it's just,
advocate so you would advocate for us to allow this person to speak and allow this person to engage a following of other like-minded people and eventually engage
sure,
in some kind of
that's freedom of
violence
speech,
against
and I'm
black people.
equally open to it for a black person to do it against a white person. They did it all this year, and you know what? It's their freedom. I'm fine with it. I just don't believe it.
That's fine, man. You're allowed to not believe it. I just think that's abhorrent if I'm being completely honest with you.
You're saying that you find it. I'm saying it's equally their right for a white person to spread hate speech about, or spread hate towards someone who's black, as it is for a black person to do it about white people.
I'm
I'm
saying
fine
that
with them
there's
doing
a
it both.
dynamic black people were enslaved for 400 years.
Name me a single person, a single color that hasn't been enslaved in human history.
We're not talking I'm talking about in
Yeah,
the
we are. We're talking
US.
about human history. If you just look at the U.S., you're going to find skeletons in the closet. If you look at the whole world, you're going to find skeletons in the closet. I'm interested in the future. I'm interested in getting us somewhere
All
better.
I'm
And
saying
people don't
is
want to let go of the past.
people in England, yeah, people don't want to let go of the past. That you're the same type of person who says we shouldn't forget our history if someone wants to take down a statue of Robert E. Lee.
How do you? I didn't even talk about that.
I'm saying
If people want to
conservatives
vote,
in
if
general.
people want to vote, no, okay, well, that's there you go, label.
Yep.
So
I'm generalizing there. I'm sorry.
so if my belief on that, if you want to touch on it, is that if the people who live there want to vote on it and they say, yeah, we don't want to support this memory and this guy anymore, take it down. But if people want to go out there and tear it down, no, I don't support that. I'm about freedom of speech. I'm about doing things in a fair way, a way that's through a republic, through a system. And people are getting radical. They're not doing it that way, and I don't like that. That's where I'm at.
Are you familiar with the phenomenon of generational trauma? This is a chat question. This isn't me going off on a tangent, just to be clear.
Generational trauma.
Yes.
Not off the top of my head, no. But I can
So
kind of.
let's say, for as an example, so you have someone whose, let's say, parent was a slave and was constantly chased down by police on trying to escape. I think being a slave and trying to escape
So
is a noble thing.
you get brought up with like those stories.
Yeah, you get brought up with the stories. You get brought up with, in black people's case particularly, a distinct increase in your likelihood of being killed by police, just like out and about on the street, or at the very least, your increased likelihood to be stopped and searched.
Uh-huh. I would encourage people to do some more research on that as well. There's more to that story than I think is often covered.
I'd be happy to. I literally have a. I just compiled a 7-page research document on the ways in which black people are affected disproportionately by the justice system.
I agree with that. I think they are. I'm just saying that I think there are some pretty gnarly reasons why. Let's just put it that way.
Are you going to 1350 me right now?
I don't even know what that is.
But are you going to say that even though they're 13% of the population, they commit 50% of the violent crime?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's true. I just think that there are that's not something that I necessarily. It is like a generational thing. So, okay, another metric that I think is largely attributed to that is fatherlessness. So,
Right.
in Black communities, I think it's around 70%. Like that's insane. And I don't mean that like they're insane. I'm saying like, how the hell are we there as a country? Like, what the hell's going on? So, and it's a rising problem for all of America. So this is what I'm saying is like there are metrics on both sides and nobody's sharing across the board. Like it's just like, okay, well, 1350, and it's like, yeah, like that's crazy. And it's like, well, what about 70% fatherless? Maybe that's related. Maybe we should be working on the values of family. But instead of that, I'm hearing, oh, like, um like women should be independent and all that stuff. And it's just like, what is going on here? Is there more going on than necessarily on face value?
Yeah.
And I think there is.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that. So the fatherlessness thing and the increase in crime are both largely dependent on the fact that black people are the fact that black people in America are disproportionately living in poverty, and
Right,
because of the
I think one of the large
because of the
reasons,
generational poverty that they experience. So
sure, and
that
but when
poverty
was
causes people to
in
see an increase in
1960
crime. Go ahead.
in 1960, fatherlessness was around 25%. There was a report put out, but I can't remember the guy's name. Sorry, but there was a report put out by some senator who said like, look, this is a huge problem. Um, and then we had what's his face, LBJ, come
Mhm.
in, and he starts the quote unquote Great Society. And what does that do? It gets people addicted to welfare, and it destroyed the families. So then we get from 25%.
Do you think it
And
was
if you
the?
look,
Do you think? I don't know that it was the welfare that destroyed the family. I think it
well, if
was
you
the.
look at, there's a correlation between them. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a
There's
correlation where in 1964, Great Society starts, and then you see the correlation between fatherlessness and welfare skyrocket together. And the reason that that makes sense is if you think about it, it's basically, and there's actually also this is that you would get more money if you weren't if you had no man in the house. So it's incentivizing people not to get married.
no.
That has an effect generationally.
I
Really.
can. So this is explained. I do have a source on this in my systemic racism document. I will have to find it, and if I don't, I will have to find a source for this that I've found somewhere. There's also a correlation between people who take out welfare and people who are in poverty, and there's also a correlation between people who live in poverty and the quality of their family planning services that they have. So therefore, people who live in poverty who don't expect to have kids will see a higher increase in the rate of fatherlessness and also a higher increase in the rate of needing to take out welfare. So
I would ask, why is there that correlation between welfare and fatherlessness, and why did they grow congruently over the last 40 to
because they're
50
both
years?
in it hinges on poverty. It hinges on generational poverty. If people can't afford contraceptions,
It's not
for
necessarily
example,
true. They were just as poor before that happened, right?
it's not
Technically,
necessarily.
and you had fatherlessness. People were
You're saying you're correlating
black
welfare from
population.
when welfare started. We're talking
Right,
about welfare. You brought this up.
right. I'm saying that welfare was when this started getting to like it became a what's it called, like a cycle, basically a cycle, and it started growing, growing, growing. If you look at the history before that, when they were in fact in slavery times, they were more likely to have a full nuclear family than they are today. Like that was as poverty gets. You didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So what's that about? I mean, like they had better values then. It doesn't make any sense.
I think there's a lot of confounding variables, and to say, hey, welfare increases fatherlessness while also
I'm
not
not saying
taking
that
into account.
necessarily. I'm saying
You
that
said that there
there's a
was a
correlation.
correlation between
Yeah, that's
welfare and
true.
fatherlessness.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true, but you didn't take into account the confounding variables.
I,
You brought this up. I'm just riffing on the things that you're saying.
I
I'm
don't
just trying.
understand what you're trying to say is like the argument here. I'm not telling you that the confounding variables are necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that there's a clear
You
correlation
tried
here, and
to
this is another issue that's going on that
you
we're not
tried to
having a
discredit
conversation
the
about.
you tried to discredit the generational trauma of black people by saying that, oh, it
Oh
was
no, no,
it's
no,
not
no, no.
necessarily.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
Sorry,
I just
and
meant
I'm
to.
sorry if I think we are
No,
very deep into the weeds on this.
Yeah, we really are. We're going all over. But hey, man, this is it's good. Like it's good we're talking about it. Like this isn't what's happening enough. Um, so I'm fine to go on our tangents and stuff like that. But I hear you. I'm talking in terms of the generational trauma. I do think that that's a totally fair concern, and something that there are people alive today that lived in very different times, and I'm sure that has an effect. But my concern here is just to not make things worse, and I don't think that they were getting better. I think that we were driving things in a very negative direction, and that's not what I want. So, people are getting so obsessed with the problems that nobody's talking about any solutions.
I mean, I firmly disagree. I think that the Democratic side, for all their faults, is at least some people are.
It's always government. That's what I keep hearing. It's just like, oh, the government will fix it.
Yeah, that's
And
what
it's
we.
like, well,
what do
how
we pay
much of it-
taxes for?
Dude, this is the point. You're addicted to, or not you, sorry. I find that many people are addicted to government being the solution in all things in life, and that's not true.
Do you think that the government has an important?
In
Go ahead.
large part, is going to be you. You have to make the decisions in your life to change who you are and what you want to be. If you keep getting this narrative that government is the solution to everything, you're going to live a very disappointed life.
What is the purpose of a government existing? What service does the government provide?
Great question.
To
you should
to
read the
people?
Constitution, and you should read the Declaration of Independence. They line it out perfectly.
I'm talking about you specifically. I've read the Declaration of Independence. I've read the Constitution multiple times. I want to know, in your opinion, what value does the government bring to us as Americans? Or what should it, let's say?
The value should be that it speaks for the people, it protects our rights, our fundamental rights, and it allows us to live good and happy lives. It shouldn't be, providing us all of these incentives and all these things. It should be free market, in my opinion. I think that I believe in freedom. That's what I'm about. I believe in letting people live their lives, and going to other people to solve your problems, which is what government is largely becoming, is saying, I don't know how to deal with it, but I'm sure you do. Here, take all my money, and then just skimming it off the top, and then they have power over you. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't think that's going in a good direction, and that seems to be everyone's interest in the solutions right now, coming from largely the left, is just saying, yeah, we got this, we'll figure it out for you, we're all the quote unquote experts.
So after
you don't have to think about it, you don't have to worry about how to fix your own life, we'll do it for you.
I largely think that people are trying to improve their material conditions, but here's my concern with what you just said. So if say the government was being lobbied by corporate interests since the 80s, since the Reagan years,
sure. Yeah, that's a problem.
And has consistently lobbied and successfully gotten tax cuts from our elected representatives who work for us, whose salaries we pay. Mm-hmm. When those elected officials work outside of improving the material conditions to the taxpayer, and instead serving the interests of corporations.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's wrong. I don't agree
for
with that at all.
For 30 years.
Do you think that up at all?
I know. I'm saying, do you think that us, the American people, are on the hook for improving our material conditions when our material conditions have been stomped on by a combination of corporate America and the federal government for decades?
That's a great question, but this is the I suppose kind of the thing I don't understand about that is, okay, so government isn't working because they're working with other interests instead of ours. They're not being a representative government. So then your solution is to look to the government to fix that?
No, our solution is to put pressure on the government to serve the American people. It isn't.
Right, so you take power away from them. You don't give it to them. That makes no sense.
How are we giving more power to the government to do things?
If you're giving them more money to fix your problems, quote unquote, then you're giving them more power.
We're already giving them like 25% of their income.
So give them
I'm not advocating for an increase in taxes. I'm not advocating for more money to come out of my pocket or your pocket, for that matter, in order to facilitate these things.
Why did you vote for Biden? That's what he's doing.
I don't think that's correct. I would have to look into his tax policy more. From what I've seen,
Trump did the biggest tax cuts in history. We're just talking.
Trump did the biggest tax cuts to corporations in American history. He actually set in place a law that dropped our taxes initially, cut corporate taxes by I think 25 to 50%, and then set in motion.
Why might he have done that?
Because he has friends and vested corporate interests.
Sure. Okay. I mean, it could be that, or it could be that maybe he's trying to get the economy going because we were in the slowest recovery after the 2008,
Oh yeah, dude. Giving
debacle.
billionaires more money is definitely the answer to
I
helping
agree
the
that the
American
billionaires are
people.
running out of the. I agree. I think that that's a problem, but I'm saying that there are things being worked on to fix those problems that Trump is working on, and people aren't paying attention to it because they're just hearing that, oh, he gave the biggest tax cuts in history to corporations, and it's like, well, maybe there's strategy going on here to get us ready, to build our economy up so that we're more competitive in the global market, which occurred and made us, be able to stand up to China and do all those things on a global scale. We stood up to the United Nations, basically saying, "Hey, you need to pay up. You're not paying your bills," and they did. I mean, he's going around kicking everyone in the butt, saying, "Hey, you need to start doing what you said you'd do," and everyone seemed to not pay attention to any of that and just say, "Oh, he did X, Y, Z, and that's all I'm going to do on the digging."
Yeah, it's because he's doing it like an idiot. If there are tactful ways to renegotiate our policies, like he didn't even
You
try to
could say that he's
renegotiate
doing it
the
like an
Iran
idiot,
deal.
but he got it done. So I don't really
Did
care
he? Do
how
you
he did.
think that we're better
Yes,
off in terms of foreign relations than we were in 2016?
yes.
No, absolutely not.
If you're saying, do they like us as much? Do they think that we're as much of a pushover as we used to be? Yeah, I don't think we are. I think we stood
Trump
up and we said,
lost the
"Hey, we're
trade war
America."
with China. The tariffs didn't work.
We'll see.
That's fine. I guess we'll see. All right, listen, man. We've been getting into this for a while. I do want to. I would love to talk to you again.
No, I'd love to as well.
Um,
And I know things get tense, man, but like honestly, at the end of the day, like it is because we're just on two sides of like a belief system. But that's why I want to talk, because I do want people to come to a common understanding.
yeah. Man. All right. Like I said, we've been going for about 2.5 hours. I think that's a
Is that right?
yeah, something like that. I
Hot
think
damn.
I've been going for 3 hours, and I started at 9 or 7. I think we popped on at
Yeah.
7:30.
Yeah, that's right. Well, cool, man. Hey, I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank your audience and thank everyone. Thank you especially. It's good to talk about this stuff, and I hope to talk to you again.
Yeah, sure thing. Real quick before we go, do we want to do
Sure.
some chat questions? Let me.
Yeah, go for it.
So chat, if I've missed your question, I can only scroll up so far, so there are a couple that I missed. I'll make sure that I don't miss those in the future. If you have any chat questions, go ahead and throw them out. You enjoy myself. Welcome to the stream. He says low T men need the approval of others. This is why the Chill Giant TV has trouble understanding Trump's approach. That would be great. I don't. I had a good comeback for that, but I'm very tired. I don't need anyone's approval. I have no. I don't think that the U.S. needs the approval of others, but I do think that it is important to work together cooperatively with other people on a global scale.
I don't necessarily feel he's not. I just think that there were people who were playing games, and in fact, I'll send you a video, man. There's a guy that I really liked. I saw him. He just was like, uh, you should look at what Trump says at the UN. He does a couple of speeches, and I think they're pretty important because he lays out what he's doing. He's saying, look, I'm standing up for America, this whole globalism thing that you guys are trying to do, which is not in America's best interest, is what he's standing up against. He's saying it's enough of the world basically taking advantage of our economy and our jobs and sending them all overseas and all that stuff while America rots away. And he stood up and said, no, enough of that. And we started doing better. So again, these are the sorts of things that I would highly encourage a lot of your audience to look into, to be like, okay, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Then if we were doing better and we were doing all these things that were historic, why would the American people have kicked him out of office? Doesn't make much sense to me. So that's where I'd leave it.
Yeah, here's my kind of quick retort to
Sure.
that.
Go.
If we had seen if his intent was to increase the material conditions of the average American worker, it didn't work, at least optically.
Well, sure, optically, I agree with you. If you look at the media and what they say, it didn't work at all. But if you look at the actual metrics, it did.
If he had plans to put, I know he said that he would put more money into the pocket of the average American, but if you look at his incentives, why would he increase taxes from now through 2027? Why would he have put that in to take effect after he leaves office? If he actually had intent
Trump wasn't going to. I don't understand what you were saying. He was going to remove more taxes. In fact, he said if he got reelected, he was going to remove the what's it called? The tax for basically your job or whatever.
The federal income tax?
No, not your federal income tax. It's like
Whew.
your tax that you get on your. I can't remember the name of it, man. I'm sorry. Like it's just like it was already lifted. The one that was lifted when COVID hit to like help alleviate some of that pain. He said, "Look, if you re-vote for me, I'll get rid of it altogether." So this was his whole standard. He's been doing this for the last 4 years. He's been deregulating the government, getting rid of regulation, taking away their power and their nonsense, giving people a lot more money. You know, people's 401ks were going through the roof. People were making more money. It was the highest economy and unemployment for Black people, Hispanic people, women, everything. Like it makes no sense to me. So that's just why I'm kind of like riding this wave of like, no, I'm going to see where this goes because I don't buy it.
We can plan on having an economic discussion at some point.
Yeah,
where
let's do that. I'd love
I'll
to.
actually look into it. Let me see. I am the ham man says, what sources would you suggest? I'm going to assume that says that means news sources.
Is he talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess he would be. Yeah, sorry. News sources. That's tough. It's like I've been doing this for a while and I'm kind of like scatterbrained about everything.
Yeah. I'm getting the same way. Yeah.
I like. I like one guy, Larry Elder. He gets a little like kind of snooty, I guess. I'm not about that. I'm trying to do this in a understanding way, I guess. But he's got some good points of views and he's very data driven. There's, let's see, for the economic stuff, I'm trying to think. Again, I would look into a lot of just Trump's speeches. This is where I started, honestly. I looked into it and I started listening to him. I didn't listen to what media sources said about him or anything like that. I started listening to the man himself. And that's when my mind changed about him. As I said, I didn't like him in 2016. But then I started listening to interviews of him. He's done more media than like direct interviews and stuff than I think any president in history. And I think there's a reason for it.
He does love to talk, doesn't he?
Well, you could see it that way, or you could see it that it's his method of getting around other people's filtration and interpretation of what he's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just go to the man himself, see what he says, and see what he believes. That's what I started doing, and I was like, yeah, I'm on board with that. You know, like I kind of believe what he's saying. So that's why a source I would.
This is kind of this is why I'm always skeptical of people saying that Trump is being censored. He literally has a press room had a press room in his house. If he wanted to say something,
if you're talking about censored in terms of, you know, it's totally a different conversation. If you're talking about when he gets kicked off Twitter versus, you know, him doing an interview. But, you know, see what he says at the UN, see what he says at, you know, just look up Trump interviews, like see where his values are. I think a lot of them are very fair. I think he does. Well, hell, I don't know if you're actually going to be able to find it now because the government, Whitehouse.gov changed. But they used to have an accomplishment list that you could just read through. So that's what I did. I would read through that and then I would kind of confirm it.
If you go onto the Wayback Machine, you should still be able to find that version of the website.
Okay, cool. So that's something I would do as well. I'm trying to think. There's some good YouTube ones, but I just can't. How about this? I'll think on it and I'll see if I can put some stuff together.
Yeah, sounds good. Have a list ready for our next conversation.
Yeah. I'd love to do that.
Oh yeah, Hamman says, you mean the accomplishment list that says that he ended COVID in October?
If it says that, I don't necessarily think that's right.
All right. Your Uncle Bart, I think I probably know your answer to this. He says, question, is Trump a sexist?
I don't think so. I mean, is he attracted to women and does he necessarily always have the best composure or always had the best composure? Probably not. But I'm not one who, nobody's perfect. Let's put it that way.
And in terms of my answer, yes. There's several credible allegations of women coming forward with rape and sexual assault allegations.
When you're a billionaire, that might happen. That's all I'll say. I said, when you're a billionaire, that might happen.
Yeah, that's why I said credible. There's been thousands, and several of them have been unsubstantiated. Sorry. Of course, a soy boy is going to think he is. I mean, you can call me a soy boy all you want. Your insults deflect off of me. I would rather you attack my points than my what you see in my opinions. And not to mention, several people are mentioning the "grab them by the pussy" comment, which I think was,
Yeah, I think
if
that
if
was.
not true, terrible optics.
No, I think it is true. I mean, I think that is stupid as hell. And like, and he said that. He said, I'm not proud that I said that. I mean,
Mhm.
he owned it, and that's what I would ask. I would say, hey man, if you said something stupid, own it.
A,
Um,
a soy boy cannot discern the legitimate pursuit of women from harassment. Do you want to tell that to my wife?
He's a sexist bastard. A harasser. And
let's keep it
quite
nice. Come on.
possibly a
Hey,
rapist.
come on.
Well, she can't hear your end of the conversation. To be fair, I've got my headphones in.
Yeah, I can't hear anything. I just hear him.
Well, I'm just trying to keep this as peaceful as possible.
Alrighty. I think we're running low on chat questions, and I am running low on time
All right,
before
man,
I
me
need
too.
to sleep.
Yeah, I'm good.
and
But hey,
Jeff
man, I
Bezos
did.
is just an
As I said, I'm
asshole.
really appreciative that you reached out and that we got to talk. It was nice.
Yeah, sure thing, man. All right. I'll shoot me any of those sources that you end up getting. If I think of any sources that might be relevant, I'll shoot them your way as well. Be well, man. Have a good one.
All right, man.
Oh my god. Oh my god, folks. Oh my god. I feel like my brain is melting. Whew.
Can you take your headphones off now, please?
How about that convo, folks?
I
I
feel like
retract my assertion if you show us your chin and its prominence or lack thereof. I've got a pretty I mean I keep the beard pretty well trimmed. I've kind of got a Chad chin. Again, these ad hominem attacks don't bother me. You enjoy myself. If you're not coming in here attacking my ideas, what are you doing? I do not retract. That's fine, man. You can rail against your image of me all you want. I'll just sit here vibing.